The story begins with the main character, Harvey, driving in a car, when his driver asks him why he always carries 2 scripts with him. Harvey replied with a slight smile that he did it in case he ever lost one. The interlocutor found this funny and noted that Harvey was always so prepared. Then he suggested that they go and eat. When the conversation ended, Harvey's expression changed. He realized that the real reason was completely different. In fact, there were 2 reasons behind his habit. One was intended for those around, to create an appearance. As Harvey placed his hand on the script lying nearby, a system window with a message appeared in front of his eyes. It said that the drama Train to Youth could be absorbed, with the possibility of continuing the process. A faint smile appeared on Harvey's lips. However, the second scenario was no longer for the eyes of others. It existed exclusively for himself, so that he could absorb it. Meanwhile, the hero arrived at L&K Studios, where the team's leader, Patrick, was talking to the director about casting Miller. He became concerned about the early start time for filming, but the conversation soon turned tense as the director accused them of ignoring him. Patrick calmly denied the accusation, but the conversation ended without being completed. Meanwhile, Harvey had already arrived at the studio, mentally preparing himself for another difficult day. Suddenly, someone noticed his presence and noted to themselves how often Harvey appeared here. Without wasting any time, Harvey walked up and greeted the man. Then he asked if there was any news. In response, the dark-haired man, Hunter, sighed loudly. He pointed the hero to a huge stack of scripts with upcoming projects for the first half of the year. Their numbers were truly staggering. Curiosity got the better of him, and Harvey asked to see them. Hunter didn't see a problem with this, believing that no one would run away from reading the script. Thanking Hunter, Harvey began to leaf through them. Watching him, the interlocutor thought to himself that such a hard-working person really deserves recognition. The scripts that the hero looked through featured a variety of genres. There were romances, historical dramas, thrillers, all waiting for actors to breathe life into them. But none of these projects seemed like a real possibility to him. The reason was obvious. Valuable scripts would never be entrusted to extras who only get one short close-up in morning dramas. Yet just being around these scenarios gave Harvey enough motivation to keep moving forward. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a commotion. The famous actor Miller expressed dissatisfaction with the fact that he was again offered a role in a romantic story. It was clear from his voice that he wanted to play in a thriller. The employee tried to convince him that, regardless of the genre, it was still the main role. But the actor was not satisfied with this. He wondered how many more romantic dramas he would have to play if his goal was to demonstrate his acting skills in more intense projects. Harvey watched the proceedings, noting to himself how different the fates of the actors could be. Some were desperate for even the slightest chance of getting a role, while others might dismiss such opportunities without even thinking twice. It was this difference that separated the nameless extra from the rapidly rising star. At one point, Miller's gaze went straight to Harvey. The hero felt awkward under such a close gaze. Thoughts started spinning in his head, and then the hero began to think about the actor's identity. He remembered how they had once started out together as interns, but now lived in completely different worlds. Everything that was happening seemed to him like some kind of provocation, which was not worth reacting to. The answer would only give the opportunity to laugh at him. So the best option was to simply leave, not allowing Miller's pride to grow any bigger. However, before he could leave, something unexpected happened. A faint glow emanated from his hand, and a system notification immediately appeared before his eyes. It confirmed that the script for Train to Youth could be absorbed. It dawned on Harvey that he was holding that very script. But before he could fully comprehend it, Hunter's voice brought him back to reality. He asked the hero why he froze in place. Then, without hesitation, he asked permission to take the script of Train to Youth into the rehearsal room for a while. Once there, he experienced a real shock when several system notifications flashed before his eyes at once. Everything that was happening seemed surreal, but each new message confirmed that it was reality. One of them particularly caught his attention. It said that absorbing the script would allow him to fully inhabit the character with absolute precision. The thought of this impossibility did not leave him, but it was pointless to deny the potential of the new skill. If this ability was truly real, if he could play roles flawlessly, then everything that previously seemed unattainable could now become possible. Without delay, Harvey began the takeover process. The character's emotions, the author's intentions, and every little detail poured into his consciousness, as if they were his own memories. When the process was completed, a strange reaction followed. The lines from the script began to flow from his lips easily and naturally, with such depth, as if he had actually become the hero of the novel. It was as if scenes from the film Train to Youth appeared before his eyes. Harvey never imagined that absorbing the script would give him such incredible acting skills. Then the idea took hold in him that from the moment he absorbed the script, everything had changed. The ability to play with absolute precision felt like the role had always belonged to him. The source of this strange, movie-like ability remained a mystery, but one thing was certain. Before, awards, recognition, and invitations to ceremonies seemed unattainable, and all he could do was watch other people's success from the sidelines. But now, for the first time, success seemed real. He thought about the difficulties of life as a budding actor. Unlike idols, there were few like him, and they didn't have big production companies behind them. Harvey believed that chasing a debut through company support was not as important as seizing the rare opportunity to audition. However, in auditions and agency decisions, certain roles always seemed pre-assigned, and he failed to enter these closed circles. But now he felt that everything could change. Approaching the team leader, he asked if he was free. In his mind, Harvey recognized Patrick, the head of the first management team, as the man through whose hands all of L and K's rising stars had passed. Then Harvey reminded about the vacant roles in Trains to Youth and asked if the casting was finished. Patrick then asked if he was interested in the project, and Harvey confirmed his interest. Then Patrick reminded him that Miller had already been cast as the lead in Train to the Young, and Harvey recalled their shared past days when they were both unknown to anyone. He thought Patrick might be wary of the potential for tension between them, but Harvey didn't see a problem with that. Then Patrick asked what role he was looking for. Harvey chose Chris, a classmate of the main characters, a minor but important character who appeared in all 16 episodes. Patrick noted that Harvey was genuinely passionate about acting, but still expressed doubts about whether the role would be too difficult for him at this stage. He noted that the character required constant on-camera presence and had a lot of lines, so Patrick advised Harvey to start with smaller roles to gradually build his confidence in front of the camera. But despite this advice, Harvey insistently asked for a chance to audition, determined to give it his all as if it were his last chance. Patrick eventually agreed, and Harvey felt grateful for the chance, just as Larry walked into the room, casually mentioning that he was also going to audition for Train to the Young and, as it turned out, for the same role of Chris. Seeing Larry, Harvey thought about how, in just 2 years since his debut, he had already become a promising newcomer, who was actively promoted by the L&K agency. Larry extended his hand to him, adding that now they would have to compete. Harvey agreed, but he thought that Larry hardly took him seriously as a competitor. He understood perfectly well that for people like him, who spent their days in the office or the gym without ever getting a single shot, Larry was a man from a completely different world. However, this time things were to be different. Harvey had fully mastered the script and deeply felt the world of Train to Youth. This thought made him smile and prepare for the upcoming fight. Harvey noted that a total of 7 people auditioned for the role in Train to the Young, including himself. Among them, Larry had already established good connections, often appearing in cameo roles in KTN weekend dramas and daily soaps. Because of this, he was often offered roles without any auditions. Approaching Harvey, Larry asked him if he had prepared well, and the hero replied that he had prepared only a little, and Larry commented that Harvey must have had a lot of time to rehearse, while he himself had not even had time to properly read the script due to filming. A girl standing nearby asked curiously if everyone present was a candidate for the same role, but the man next to him explained that they were candidates for different roles. The casting director soon arrived and, after examining the assembled group, he noted their impressive appearance. The man with glasses confirmed this and said that the actors were indeed handsome. The casting director then told everyone to go inside and wait their turn. Patrick then handed Harvey a section of the script. He praised him for his neat makeup, advising him not to be nervous and to start by reading the scene in question. The girl then asked what the text was, and the man explained that it was a passage for a designated scene, and, since the schedule was seriously behind, they decided to skip the free acting improvisation, focusing only on the characters' lines. He added that the director had been holding auditions non-stop since 9 in the morning, so they needed to be understanding about it. Upon hearing this, the girl expressed surprise and disappointment, because she had been preparing the improvisation for so long. Larry then asked anxiously if he needed to memorize the text, but Patrick reassured him, saying that reading from a sheet of paper was much better than learning it poorly and getting confused. The candidates began to feel unsure as they discussed who the lines were addressed to and how best to deliver them. At this point, Harvey tried to calm down, deciding that if he didn't worry, he could cope. The casting director announced the start of auditions and called Chelsea first. However, her performance ended in just 5 minutes, and as she left, she noted with annoyance that she was not even allowed to show the acting improvisation she had prepared. Patrick tried to console her by suggesting that she had performed well anyway. Larry left the room in high spirits and announced that some roles had already been approved, and that Miller would definitely play the main character. Patrick, noticing Larry's satisfied look, assumed that his audition had been a success. Larry added that the director recognized him from the TV series Powerful Sam Bach, which probably played a role. However, he said with a rather smug look that it was just a trifle. At that moment, the casting director invited Harvey. Before entering, the employee wished him luck. Harvey reminded himself that the main thing now was not to get nervous. Inside the hall, a man sitting at a table asked whether the hero had received the text, and he answered in the affirmative. Seeing that he did not have the script in his hands, the man wondered if he had forgotten it, but Harvey explained that he had memorized the entire passage. The man said that if necessary he could look at the text and gave the signal to begin, and Harvey said that he would begin with the 3rd episode at the 25th minute. The man gave him the lead-in about whether Chris was right for Sally. Harvey began his scene by refuting this notion and emphasizing that Sally never judged people by their money. The man then asked to skip to episode 4 at the 33rd minute mark and play the scene where Chris loses his temper. Harvey continued, sharply accusing Lester of speaking out of a sense of inferiority. He demanded that they stop taking out their anger on others. While he was playing, the woman sitting at the jury table watched him with obvious interest. She remembered a line from the 1st episode about the pain of separation manifesting itself as a physical state, and noticed that Harvey had added a slight twitch of the eyelid to the scene, like a reflexive blink at moments of peak emotion, and she wondered if that was a conscious choice on his part. Harvey replied that he didn't know what image the writer had in mind, so he decided to express it in his own way. The woman was delighted to hear this, and admitted that this was exactly the detail she had in mind when she wrote the scene. Then another man asked when Harvey had managed to learn the entire text. Harvey said that he had memorized it 2 days ago. The man was amazed, since the full script up to the 4th episode had only been sent to agencies 2 days earlier. It turned out that Harvey had learned 4 episodes plus the audition clip in just 1 day. Then the man asked another question, whether he could cope if there were more texts or if the character was significantly changed, and the hero confidently assured that he could. Then the man said that the audition was over. As Harvey walked out, the man turned to the casting director and asked in surprise where such an actor had suddenly appeared from. The casting director, no less amazed, noted that Harvey had made his debut quite a long time ago, but for some reason had gone unnoticed until that day. The woman, still under the impression, said with a smile that everyone was probably thinking the same thing. The director then decided to completely rewrite the script, making Chris the central figure. Now the story was to be built around a secondary character who bore the weight of the main role. After the audition was over, Harvey went outside where Lindsay was already waiting for him. This was the protagonist's colleague, and he was also not very lucky. When Lindsay met him, he put his hand on his shoulder and asked how the audition went. Harvey replied that everything felt exactly the same as before. In his opinion, nothing had changed. Lindsay laughed, remembering how they used to audition together in the old days. At that moment, Harvey thought about the fact that Lindsay had not left acting because of a lack of talent. In fact, if everything was determined only by ability, Lindsay would have been better than both himself and Miller. The real reason for Lindsay's departure was the lack of so-called star charisma. Later, as they sat in a restaurant eating food, Lindsay admitted that if he had known then how boring his current life would turn out to be, he might have tried to hold on to his dream of acting longer. Harvey advised him to drink in moderation, but Lindsay merely remarked that seeing the hero before him brought him relief, as if the realization that his own sacrifice and the abandonment of his dream had not been in vain. He said that being able to buy Harvey a drink now gave him a sense of peace. Lindsay added that no one can defeat someone who is patient, and seeing Harvey continue to persevere made him believe that one day he would succeed. The hero thanked him, but Lindsay brushed him off, saying that it all sounded too cloying, and suggested that they just have a drink. Sitting there, Harvey reflected on how there were no easy paths in life, and pursuing an acting career seemed like a walk down an endless dark tunnel with no hint of light in sight. Lindsay then changed the subject and asked if Harvey thought he was still stealing the show, but Harvey replied that nothing had changed. Lindsay then reproachfully called one man ungrateful, recalling how he had once said that they should support each other, but had completely changed as soon as he achieved success. Harvey advised him to forget about it and leave it all in the past, but Lindsay's anger did not subside, so Harvey eventually suggested that he go out for a smoke to cool off a little. In his thoughts, the hero admitted to himself that, despite the lack of desire to criticize Miller's success, he also sometimes wondered why he had changed so much. Lindsay then lit a cigarette and offered it to Harvey, who declined, explaining that he had quit smoking. Lindsay then brought the topic of auditions back to him and asked if Harvey had auditioned for Train to the Young. Harvey replied that it seemed to have gone well. Then Lindsay noted the confidence in his voice and asked who would play the lead role. Harvey said that Miller will be the lead actor, Ingrid will play the female lead, and Kendrick will play the second male character. He added that the series will probably have good ratings. These words surprised Lindsay, who asked if Harvey had been sent to meet Miller and what the real reason was. Harvey didn't go into a long explanation, just thinking to himself that he was tired of Miller's success, and the fact that he himself was constantly being ignored. He knew he had to use his strange ability while it still remained with him, because he no longer had the right to be selective. Checking his phone, Harvey saw a message from his general manager, reminding him to take every chance he got to audition. He realized that in the L&K company, the system that once worked smoothly was now completely out of order. Despite the debut, his name was still not on any major portal. His experience was limited to a few university workshops, minor roles in the theater, and a couple of commercial productions. And he felt like nothing more than a useless cog. When Harvey arrived at the office, he overheard his colleagues discussing his selection over Larry. At this point, Patrick noted with a smile that he had been really looking forward to Harvey's arrival. Then he walked up to him and handed him the coffee. After that, he invited the hero to go to the restroom. At that moment, Larry approached him. He congratulated him on successfully passing the audition. Harvey thanked him, and Larry immediately went to film. Following Patrick, Harvey thought that if he didn't have his ability, he would probably be wearing the same mask of hidden envy on his face right now. The man noticed that Harvey looked different than when he was talking to Larry. He added that he seemed really happy now, and seeing his smile was pleasant for him too. Then the hero, immersed in his thoughts, wondered why he felt such satisfaction. For the first time, he realized that even Larry and Miller were no different from himself. This thought pleasantly surprised the hero and even made him blush a little. When he heard that the director was going to rewrite the script, changing the character as well, Patrick was surprised to suggest that the director had probably noticed the character's talent. Then Harvey laughed and thanked him for those words. Suddenly, Chelsea walked into the office, loudly expressing irritation and worrying that her character might be cut. Her colleagues tried to calm her down, but she didn't listen. At this moment, the hero seemed to pretend that he was not there at all. Approaching Harvey, she asked to speak to him alone. At first, the hero did not react to her request, but eventually he agreed. On the street, Chelsea begged Harvey to ask the director to keep her role, claiming that he was clearly interested in her. Harvey, confused, asked where she got that from. The girl explained that everyone was talking about how strong his final audition was, which is why the script and roles were now being completely rewritten. She asked him to say at least one word in her defense to the director, suggesting that he could at least recommend her for the role of classmate from Rich Family No. 1. As she spoke, a memory came to mind that Harvey wished he could forget. He said that the script belongs to the writer and director, and he himself has no power to change anything. While he recalled how he once asked Miller for a small role and what he answered him then, Harvey then wondered if she was implying that he should take responsibility for her having to audition again. In response, Chelsea screamed, accusing him that it was indeed his fault. She stated that he had overdone it, memorizing the text obsessively just to stand out. Harvey then thought she was hopeless. When she asked him what he meant, he replied that she had never really prepared for an audition in her life. If her character was cut during the script revisions, it only meant that she had failed to prove her indispensability. He added that he at least thought she knew her place, and then turned around and left. Back in the office, Patrick noticed that everything that had happened was written all over his face, and assumed that Chelsea was simply being greedy and jealous. He advised Harvey to try to understand her, and then, changing the subject, asked where they had left off. Harvey reminded them that the conversation was about the director. The man confirmed, naming the director, Axel, and adding that this time he really needed a hit. Harvey thought about director Axel, knowing that if the project failed, he might be reduced to making weekend dramas or working in the planning department, and wondered if the director's position had really been undermined by the low ratings. But Patrick explained that it was not about the contracts, since they were permanent. The thing was, changing the script for Harvey's sake only proved the director's impulsive nature. Many actors complained about him, and there would probably be many unplanned text changes during filming. Harvey reflected on how some actors lose screen time out of necessity, while others have lines added because the number of episodes is limited, and characters can't be completely written out of the plot, but their importance can be minimized. Patrick then noted that the director invariably encounters conflicts with the leading actors on every project, but at the same time continues to be considered a master of his craft. Harvey then asked if the director personally chose Miller for the lead role. The man replied that the company also had some influence on this choice, after which he asked why Harvey was asking. Harvey just thought that he suspected as much. In his opinion, the director was unlikely to have made the choice on his own. It's likely that an upstart like Miller was added to the project so that the company could recoup the losses from his failed film with the help of this drama. Knowing Miller's proud nature, Harvey wondered how long he could last under the guidance of an old-fashioned and capricious director. After this thought, he stood up and, deciding that it did not concern him, left. Soon the first day of script reading arrived. Harvey looked at Miller and noticed his tense demeanor. It then became clear to him that, despite Miller's recent claims that acting in a romantic drama was easy, he probably hadn't even had time to properly read the script. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of Harvey, notifying him that the content from a drama called Train to Youth had already been consumed. Suddenly, the casting director entered the room and asked if everyone was present. Since this was the first reading, he asked everyone to briefly introduce themselves. He asked each actor to introduce themselves in turn and tell a little about themselves. Miller gave his name and said he would be playing Usher. Next, a girl named Ingrid introduced herself as the actress playing Sally and expressed her joy at the opportunity to work with everyone. Harvey then introduced himself as the new actor cast in the role of Chris, adding that the role is much bigger than his current capabilities, and so he will always approach it with deep humility. The casting director began reading the first episode. The scene took place in the spring of 2009 and introduced the main character, Asher, who, despite his poor background, was full of determination. On the other hand, Chris, a high school student, enjoyed privileges thanks to his congressman father. Between them was Sally, a schoolgirl who became the first love for both of them. Ingrid read out her line, expressing hope that the two boys would become friends again. In response, Miller noted that his character reminisced about his friendship with Chris, admitting to himself that he was so blinded by it that he stopped noticing everything around him. He said that no one belittled him for his background in his class, but even among them he was an outcast. Even though he was friends with a rich man like Chris, they lived in different worlds. Harvey realized that this scene was key to the first episode, and that it was with this that he began his filming. The casting director then approached Miller, asking him to reenact the scene, but this time hiding his emotions. Miller seemed confused when he heard this request. The director then explained that he was being overly emotional, and since the line was being spoken in front of the girl he liked, the scene had to be filled with a sense of humiliation, not just emotion. Miller agreed to try again. Harvey watched closely, analyzing the scene. He realized that it was a difficult moment, where Asher expressed sadness about his difficult situation in front of Chris. The scene was supposed to be multi-layered, with hints of sadness and humiliation, but Miller showed only anger, which indicated a superficial understanding of the character. The reading continued, and since most of the actors were experienced, the general atmosphere remained positive. However, a problem soon arose. Suddenly, a man shouted, introducing himself as Chris. It was Kendrick, the second lead actor, who loudly reminded everyone of his role as the second male lead. Harvey recognized him as a model and thought that he was probably hired only because of his popularity, and although the guy looked attractive, his talent was simply wasted. Then the casting director moved on to the next scene. Harvey wondered if it was finally his turn. The scene took place at the end of the first episode, when his character was visiting Asher at home. Asher was squatting on the floor, looking anxious and nervous, when there was a knock at the door. Miller then turned to Harvey and asked if it was him. At this point, Harvey began to play without a script in his hands. He asked to be let inside quickly, saying that he had something important to talk about. Miller looked at the script and responded by saying that Harvey's character was talking down to him, and asking if he was starting to think of himself as superior. But Harvey calmly countered, denying such intentions, but implying that things could soon change, and accused him of causing trouble. Ingrid, watching Harvey's performance, was amazed at how naturally he got into the role, without even looking at the text. The hero continued, warning Miller not to act arrogantly, and asked how much longer the students would support him. Miller retorted, warning him to be careful. But Harvey coolly finished his part by stating that there was a man who was watching him closely. When the scene ended, Harvey admitted that he had made a mistake. He realized that he had not delivered his lines quite correctly, and apologized to Miller for acting without a script. The blonde, irritated, sharply scolded him and told him to take his time and read the text carefully. The casting director, pleased with the performances of all the actors, thanked them for their diligence. He noted that the script had been unexpectedly reworked, making it more difficult to understand, but at the same time he praised their deep analysis of the characters. And as a token of gratitude, he offered to arrange a dinner at a restaurant that same evening. At this time, Patrick was standing outside the door, waiting for the team to come out. He asked how they were doing. The director, clearly impressed, called Harvey a real beast, wondering where such a talented actor came from. However, Miller quietly cursed that this was all complete nonsense. Then Patrick asked the director to let the two of them go with him for a while. At this point, Miller angrily approached Harvey, accusing him of thinking he was untouchable just because he had passed one audition, and asking if he was crazy. Harvey then calmly asked why Miller was blaming him for his own lack of preparation. Miller became even more furious, He began to yell at the man, reminding him how Harvey had once begged to be taken on the project and now behaved arrogantly, having barely passed the casting. He vented all his anger by stating that this was precisely why he never wanted to work with unknown people. Harvey was silent, thinking. Now he understood why Miller always ignored him. Those who tasted success inevitably began to consider the lives of those who did not achieve this success insignificant. Miller continued to shout insults, but Harvey silently turned and walked away. He thought about how Miller probably looked like a plague, capable of infecting everyone with her failure just by her presence. The thought seemed disgusting to him, but he was sure that this was the real reason for Miller's behavior. Soon Harvey entered the restaurant, where the rest of the team had already gathered. They called him over and he came over, asking for tongs and offering to take over for someone at the grill. A few minutes later, Miller reappeared in the room, now a little calmer. The others invited him to join, noticing that the meat on his table was not even fully cooked. But Miller declined, citing a slight stomachache. Someone present noted that the leading actor should sit directly opposite the director, calling his behavior rude and ill-mannered. People wondered if he always behaved like this, and noted that such an attitude at the very beginning of the job did not bode well. Harvey then responded that he himself was not close with either Miller or the director. He thought about how small the show business really is in Korea. In his opinion, the disappearance of a popular actor, or the sudden rise of a newcomer on all 3 major TV channels at once, began with precisely such unnoticeable details. Harvey remembered his senior colleague Mira, who came across as someone with a quiet confidence and clear expectations of her junior colleagues. He thought that if he could win the favor of such a veteran, then the further path would become much easier. Realizing that he had succeeded, he decided that he had a very good start. At this point, the director addressed everyone, praising them for the work they had done. He called it a great start, and then urged them to continue in the same spirit. The team greeted these words with cheers, and Harvey felt genuine joy. The next morning, Harvey woke up confused and with a heavy head. He tried to remember how much he had drunk the night before. However, something didn't seem quite right to him. The hero soon realized that this was not his dorm at all. His mother entered the room, noticing that he had returned home very late. She added that if it weren't for Lindsay, he would have fallen asleep somewhere on the street in the cold. Then his mother called him down to eat, saying she had made bean sprout soup. Getting out of bed, Harvey noted that some things in life never changed. The debt was still there, but the warmth of their home was still there, as were the strange, unpleasant memories. Approaching the table, he saw his parents, who were already talking about him. His mother asked him if he was worried too much now, noticing that he rarely came home lately. But Harvey replied that he was doing well these days. His mother smiled and said that she felt better, and Harvey looked at her and thought how beautiful she looked, despite her age. He was sure that it was thanks to her that he looked good. Then his mother said that even if he comes home completely drunk, she still enjoys seeing him. She said she had made fried radish and bean sprout soup, and admitted that she considered herself a good mother. She asked him to visit them more often, even if it was only occasionally, because warm, home-cooked dinners together remained a special time. Harvey thought that before he would have considered these words just a pretense, because he had failed to achieve success and considered himself unworthy to look his family in the eyes. But now everything had changed. He told his mother that the mini-series Train to Youth would air on SBC on December 18th at 10 p.m., so now she will see his face much more often. He added that he had passed the casting and hoped that she would be looking forward to the release of the series. Mom was overjoyed and exclaimed with joy, talking about what a wonderful son she had. Seeing her so happy gave Harvey a feeling of deep satisfaction. He realized that it was for this moment that he began his acting career. After this, the woman called all her friends and boasted about her son's achievements. Later, while checking her phone, she noticed that Harvey's name had appeared in the news. He calmly noted that they had merely mentioned his name, but she said that such things should definitely be promoted and talked about. Delighted, she began calling all her friends, happily telling them about her son's success. After that, Harvey entered his room. He prepared to study the scripts that the team leader had handed him the night before, probably while intoxicated. The more he thought about it, the more grateful he felt. He received a total of 3 scripts: Myungmak Artists, A Woman's Cry, and Bus Driver. All of these new films were supposed to start filming later this year. Harvey decided to start with Bus Driver to fully immerse himself in its content. At that moment, a system window appeared in front of him. There was a message that the level of intimacy with the script had reached its maximum, and he now had access to information about the state of completion of unreleased films. Another window appeared with a list of such films and their ratings on a 100-point scale. Harvey wondered if the numbers represented points out of 100 or a percentage of completion, but they clearly indicated a percentage of completion. He picked up the scripts, and immediately several more windows appeared. It turned out that the film Miracle in Prison had a score of 92 out of 100. The Advocate received 96, while Sweet Beginning Sad Ending had only 45. The first two films were considered true masterpieces of Korean cinema, each scoring over 90. Meanwhile, Miller's flop debut film, Sweet Beginnings, Sad Endings, failed to even reach 1.5 million views, receiving only 45. Harvey concluded that the system shows precisely the level of value of the script. Although this did not guarantee box office success, it did allow us to filter out quality projects. He thought he could use the system to evaluate the train to youth as well. However, the next notice stated that the takeover does not work with unfinished scripts. This meant that dramas with reworked texts could not be absorbed. Harvey then realized that Train to Youth, like most similar dramas, would most likely fail. Despite this, he began to better understand the principles of how the system worked. After looking at the scripts again, he decided that he should no longer force himself to work on questionable projects. There were plenty of other jobs out there in the world, and all he could do was wait patiently for the right project that he could succeed in. Later, Harvey arrived at L&K's studio and began looking for the team's leader. He noticed him and greeted him warmly, saying that Harvey looked cheerful and rested. He added that he had big news, and Harvey responded with curiosity. At this point, Patrick informed someone on the phone that Harvey had already arrived. A few seconds later, someone else entered the room and greeted Harvey happily. At that moment, the hero turned around and looked at the newly arrived guests in surprise. He noticed Hunter, who came with the girl. Hunter looked at him with a familiar look, saying that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Then Patrick introduced them to each other, adding that these were the people Harvey would be working with from now on. He reminded that Harvey already knew Hunter, who was now working as a tour manager, and Harvey confirmed that he remembered Hunter, but asked who the girl next to him was. The team leader then explained that her name was Juno, that she had recently transferred from another company and would now be working as Harvey's stylist. He added that he had already given Hunter all the schedule and details, so all Harvey had to do was follow the instructions and listen carefully. Then Harvey, driven by curiosity, asked Hunter if he still performed all of these duties, since he was now a director and no longer had to work as a manager. Hunter explained that there is currently a management shortage in the industry. The salaries in the field are low, the work is difficult, and the entertainment world is not what it seems. However, Hunter admitted that he has no complaints, adding that it has been a long time since he worked on the roads and now the nostalgia makes the process enjoyable again. At this point, Juno tried to smooth things over a bit by remarking that they probably should have shaken hands when they first met. Harvey introduced himself formally and said he was looking forward to working together. Hunter then suggested moving to another location to discuss further business. Once in the new premises, Hunter handed Harvey some documents, explaining that this was a teaser concept for the upcoming Saturday. He added that the project Train to Youth has planned to shoot a teaser and a poster. Juno explained that she prepared the concept photo after consulting with the leader of the costume team for this project. Hunter clarified that the teaser's concept was built around a train journey, which, while a common idea, suited Train to Youth perfectly. Juno added that the costume design will highlight Chris's character's profession as a journalist, so a simple and modern style was chosen. Hunter shared his thoughts, noting that his words might sound empty. But as he watched Harvey come into the office every day and read his scripts, he began to believe that Harvey would soon begin to shine. Harvey chuckled softly upon hearing this. Hunter then turned to Juno and remembered the way Harvey's eyes lit up while he read the script. He said that despite his attempts to hide it, Harvey was full of ambition. These words surprised Harvey for a moment. However, Hunter immediately assured him that ambition is necessary for a person. Then Harvey asked with a smile how they felt about him now. He wondered if he seemed more ambitious than they expected, or if there was still something missing. Juno replied that she thought he looked happy enough, and now all that was left for him to do was shine on stage. Hunter noted that Juno doesn't know Harvey well yet, since this is their first meeting, and he himself has known him for many years. He added that he always trusts his intuition. However, Juno gently disagreed with him, saying that she was not so sure about that, and listening to their conversation, Harvey felt good. He asked them to stop teasing him. He noted that both of them were quite funny. In response, Hunter laughed and suggested that they go out for dinner to celebrate Harvey's debut before they went home, and the hero agreed and asked Juno if she would be willing to join. Juno happily replied that she didn't mind. Then Harvey suggested broth soup for dinner. Hunter and Juno simultaneously said that they liked this kind of soup. As they walked out, Harvey thought about how Hunter and Juno had already prepared the perfect scene for him. The teaser shoot was scheduled for the day after tomorrow. As he left with a smile, he thought about how he would now enjoy every moment. The next day, it all started when Hunter noticed Harvey arriving earlier than the appointed time. The man said he was just about to call him in 10 minutes, and Harvey explained that he probably woke up out of inertia, since it was his first shoot and he was nervous. He asked if Hunter had slept well. Hunter replied that even with all his experience, it was the cool morning air that always seemed most comfortable to him. Then Harvey smiled and got into the car. Where Juno was already, she greeted him. And Harvey asked if she was tired. Juno confidently said that she did not feel tired at all. Then Harvey remembered how just 2 days ago they had gotten so drunk they passed out that they both barely made it home. The longer he watched her, the more he became convinced that she was truly an unusual person. It was only 5 in the morning and there were still 4 hours left before filming began. But preparation took time. Soon Harvey was fully prepared. Then Juno looked him over and asked him how he liked the suit, and Harvey said that he liked it. Hunter chuckled, and noted that after Miller and Larry got into trouble, anyone around Harvey would now be eclipsed by his presence. Juno agreed, and added that Harvey always looked impeccable, and absolutely everything looked good on him. Hunter noted that Juno also has excellent taste in clothing. He then joked that if he wore the suit himself, he wouldn't look as good, and Juno responded with a smile that it was obvious. Afterwards, Harvey praised Juno, noting that she always knows how to rub salt into the wound. Inwardly, he felt that this suit was completely different from his everyday clothes. He immersed himself in his role with every breath. Harvey felt like he was finally becoming his character. For the first time, he began to feel the admiring glances from the outside. After that, they all headed towards the car. Suddenly, Hunter approached the hero. Before getting into the car, he asked if it was time for them to leave. Harvey looked at him with a little surprise at first. Then he agreed, and they got into the car. On the way to the set of Train to Youth, he thought about how strangely he had not been able to fall asleep this morning. Looking out the car window, he noted how the surrounding scenery matched the atmosphere of the drama. Hunter, checking his phone, reported that there were about 20 minutes left before filming began. He asked Harvey what he was going to do, suggesting that they wait a little. However, Harvey decided to go and say hello to everyone. Hunter agreed, saying it was a good idea for a first shoot, and went out with him. Harvey then met the director and greeted him politely, asking how he was doing. The director, pleased, responded warmly, noting that Harvey had arrived early. The hero said that it just happened that way. Afterwards, the man said that Harvey had arrived just in time. Then the director took him by the hand and led him to a certain place. Then he asked the young man to stand there. He looked Harvey over carefully and noted that he looked exactly as he expected. Harvey thought that perhaps the team was especially motivated now that the project was on the brink of elimination. At this time, the director turned around and noticed the newly arrived actors. It turned out it was Ingrid and Kendrick. He greeted them and praised them for their early arrival. Seeing that almost all the actors were already there, the director suggested discussing the storyboard over a cup of hot coffee. At this point, one of the staff members informed the director that one person had not yet arrived. Then the director asked in surprise who it was, and the employee said that Miller was missing. Hearing this, the director was clearly shocked and quickly asked when he would arrive. The employee assured that he would contact the right people right away, and called another team member to check whether Miller had reached the shooting location. In response, he was informed that Miller would arrive in 5 minutes. Watching what was happening, Harvey felt an unpleasant feeling of guilt, although he understood perfectly well that in fact the assistant director was not guilty of anything. At that moment, Hunter came up to him and told Harvey not to worry too much. He explained that everything that was happening was just a kind of performance, a demonstration for the team to show. If someone is late, the responsibility may fall on the wrong person in the future. Hunter then added that the actor used to behave differently, but after becoming a presenter, he gradually adopted the bad habits of his older colleagues. Now that filming had long ceased to start at exactly 9 in the morning, he began to believe that the assembly time should be adjusted to suit him. In this way, I trained the entire production team to suit my convenience. Harvey only responded with surprise, wondering to himself why actors had to fight with the production team at all. After all, they could all just work together and support each other. Hunter then noted that when he himself was a newbie, he said exactly the same thing. This phrase caused Harvey a slight surprise. Hunter then added that he was going to go over and talk to the actor. He started yelling at Miller, calling him a stubborn ass, and asked him what he was doing on his first shoot. At this time, Juno joined them and told Harvey not to worry. According to her, it is better to scold someone in the morning than to allow a situation later, where the assistant director is punished for something he did not do. She stressed that although everyone appears friendly on the outside, behind the scenes there is always politics and a struggle for influence. Harvey agreed with her and thought about how pathetic the situation was, with employees, managers, directors, and actors all smiling while holding knives behind their backs, each desperately fighting for control. However, he understood that an even more pitiful sight awaited him ahead. A few minutes later, Miller got out of the car. As he put his jacket on, he apologized, explaining his lateness by saying that his manager had taken a wrong turn. He asked where the director was, watching the reaction carefully. The hero, looking at what was happening, quietly asked what this man was trying to do. But Juno noticed that it was just another acting performance. Harvey expressed doubt that such a trick would work, but Juno explained that it would work. The thing is, no one would dare argue with the leading actor when he makes such a spectacular entrance. But Harvey thought differently. He knew Miller had picked the wrong opponent. According to Patrick, director Axel was not the kind of person who particularly appreciated actors as individuals. This was a man who, for the sake of art, knew how to deliver directorial blows with special pride, and had no intention of changing his methods. Harvey thought that this tactic wouldn't work. At that moment the director approached, smiling slightly. He greeted the great actor Miller with caustic irony. The man announced that since he had finally deigned to come, they had better start filming before dawn. After all, they didn't want to waste the precious time of such a busy person. Miller didn't understand why the man was behaving so strangely. The director then abruptly reminded Miller that he was late and told him to get ready for the scene. Miller apologized again, explaining that the manager had taken the wrong route. To this, the director responded with a caustic grin that perhaps they should change the navigation system. This unexpected comment made Miller shut up, and Juno, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but laugh. She was amused by the director's outburst, and thought that it would be a spectacle worth watching with a bucket of popcorn. Harvey only agreed with her thoughts. However, the girl's behavior still scared him a little. Then the hero thought about what a teaser is. It could be compared to an appetizer before the main course, a small serving designed to arouse the viewer's curiosity. Unlike a trailer, a teaser does not show the actual content, but only creates an atmosphere and intrigues the audience. While the team watched the teaser for the film, they discussed how the video was trending second, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Everyone noted the high quality of the filming and the brightness of the shots, adding that the production team clearly did not skimp on creating this work. No one saw any signs of cheap CGI, and everyone agreed that teams working at the level of the film industry were creating projects of a completely different scale. Hunter, pleased with what he saw, placed his hand on Harvey's shoulder and complimented his screen presence. Harvey, smiling, replied that in the video he only appears for a moment behind another character. But Hunter insisted that he was the one who managed to steal the spotlight, and asked what it was like to see a teaser of himself trending in real time, a question that Harvey thought about. As a newcomer to Train to Youth, he was only ranked 18th in popularity, and knew that it was still a rather modest amount of attention compared to the others. Looking at his phone, he thought how amazing it was to see his own face online, and felt himself being overcome by this feeling of recognition and attention that he had been waiting for so long. For him it was like falling into a sweet but dangerous temptation. Hunter, looking at the response, said that with little competition from other shows, this is an ideal result, and the team can expect good success. Harvey responded with a smile and kept up the good mood. At that moment, a scream was heard from the side. Miller, raising his voice in irritation, declared that he was not going to watch this trash. One of the employees, looking at him in surprise, said that he only wanted to praise Miller for appearing in the teaser. However, the guy, becoming increasingly angry, called the teaser cheap, filled with second-rate emotions. Finally, he added that it was a pitiful sight. Those around him began to whisper, not understanding what had caused such a reaction in him. Hunter didn't even know how to react at that moment. Soon the director, returning to the filming process, asked to shoot another take. He then asked about the crew's mood, and reminded them that they needed to finish filming before lunch, including the photo shoot for the poster. He explained that they were in a tourist area, and that children would soon arrive, causing chaos. People around were discussing the situation. Some thought that the previous take was quite successful, and wondered why the director was so angry. Others said it was just his way of maintaining discipline on the court, as no one would tolerate arrogance there. Someone added that their lease was running out and the director couldn't afford any delays. Hunter noted that when a director and an actor come into conflict, it is the crew that suffers the most. And it was Miller who ended up receiving serious criticism that day. Someone asked why he had to provoke the director at all, since the general manager had already explained the situation he was in, and perhaps the actor had simply forgotten. Ingrid suggested that, knowing Miller's character, he only held back because he was playing the lead role. However, everyone agreed that being late on the first day of filming reflected poorly on the director's authority, and the blame here lay solely with Miller. Larry also added that his habit of getting into conflicts is well known. At the same time, another person noted that despite his difficult character, this actor was not someone who would thoughtlessly destroy his career. Harvey thought about it too. He agreed that Miller's outburst was not due to weakness. Even as a presenter, he didn't seem like the type of person who would suddenly lose control. Hunter, meanwhile, noted that another problem had arisen. He then turned his attention to Harvey, expressing concern. After this, other people also paid attention to the hero. Then the man with glasses walked up to Hunter and Harvey. He looked at the hero again and asked what he had to do with it. The director, looking at Harvey, praised him for the way he conveyed emotion in his thoughtful gaze, noting that he perfectly expressed longing and pain. Harvey responded with a short laugh, but thought how different this reaction was from filming with Miller. The director went on to marvel at how Harvey was able to convey the dissonance between a glorious past and a broken friendship with just one look. Harvey took the praise in stride, realizing that the character of Chris was personally developed by the director, which explained such a strong emotional attachment to him. In a normal situation, such words could have eased the tension on the set. However, Miller unexpectedly expressed irritation at the apparent agreement among the other project participants, who listened to the director's instructions as if on command. In his mind, Harvey acknowledged that such harmony could become a problem if it led to the protagonist being overshadowed. He then approached Miller, accusing him of failing to live up to even the expectations of supporting roles. He asked him to stop acting like a child. He insisted that he stop disturbing others by making unnecessary mistakes. Miller became noticeably angry, his hands shaking with rage. His behavior did not go unnoticed. Members of the film crew began to whisper. They were concerned that the outburst of anger occurred in front of the director and the entire staff. Some were worried whether the cameras were on, and whether the CEO would find out about the incident. But everyone hoped that information about it would not leak out. Harvey, thinking, realized that no matter how hard crew chief Patrick tried to smooth things over, the incident had already left a lasting mark on Miller's career. The hero thought that he would not openly enter into conflict, and would simply annoy him with how well he played. He also believed that if he continued to provoke Miller solely with his acting, without words, he would break sooner or later. In the end, he will be left alone. Then someone from the team approached Miller and politely asked him to curb his anger a little. In response, the guy waved him off and said that he would do just that. After that, he cursed the team for being too fussy. He then walked towards the director and addressed him with a wide smile. Miller then said he didn't understand the script. The director, surprised, wondered whether his explanations were really that unclear, since the instructions in the text, in his opinion, were quite clear. But Miller insisted that he was following the script and did not understand what was required of him beyond that. The director then pointed to the script and explained that he had completely misinterpreted the scene. It was meant to convey warm memories of Chris before the character's anger was awakened. However, the actor played the scene like a madman, but Miller considered the criticism to be overly harsh. The director, increasingly irritated, reminded that he had repeated the same thing countless times. In his words, Asher is the heart of the whole drama. This is a character who holds back his emotions, not one who explodes at the first tension. The key was in subtle acting, in restrained actions, and in a quiet inner strength. The director was puzzled why it was so difficult to understand. Miller then accused the script of lacking clarity. The director, smiling in disbelief, said that he simply failed to analyze the character. Then he began to scold him even more severely. One of the team members asked Hunter if he should intervene to defuse the situation, but he suggested waiting a little, explaining that Harvey was already on his way. Meanwhile, at the edge of the court, Juno was calmly eating popcorn, genuinely enjoying the heated scene, comparing what was happening to a TV debate show. Harvey, watching this, wondered if she had prepared the popcorn in advance. The director, already shouting, demanded that Miller realize how much time had been lost because of him. He wondered if he thought filming romantic scenes was a trifle. After this, the man turned to the assistant. He ordered a second director to be called in, and instructed Miller to rework the script. He then announced a scene change, asked the next actor to get ready, and ordered the camera crew to reframe the shot. After this, one of the team members approached Harvey. He informed him that he would have to start filming first, asking if he was ready, to which Harvey responded that he was ready. Then the same assistant asked Penelope if everything was okay, and she answered in the affirmative. Harvey was thinking about Penelope. Even though she is 3 years younger than him, this is already her third project. Since their characters have been in a long-term relationship since their school years, they were going to interact closely on set. He advised her not to address him too formally, as it would create awkwardness, and she responded by saying that she would call him Appa and suggested that he speak to her more simply. Harvey felt relieved by her friendly tone and knew they would get along well. The director then apologized to both of them for the sudden scene change, and they assured him that everything was fine. He suggested holding a rehearsal and consulted a page of the script. Then the hero reminded him that it was page 32, scene 12, episode 1. Then Harvey remembered that in the upcoming scene, a young couple was casually talking about the future that awaited them in a few years. Since a camera on rails would be used, visual movement became important. He gently asked Penelope if he could hold her hand. The girl was very surprised and blushed, but still allowed him to do it. Then he carefully took her hand. Meanwhile, everyone on the set held their breath. Inwardly, Harvey remarked on how good Penelope's performance was, especially in how naturally and softly she finished her lines. Everything happened naturally and organically. At this point, someone from the film crew announced that the take was beginning. Everyone took positions and filming began. Harvey and Penelope played their roles with great pleasure. Later, the crew chief got out of the car and asked Miller a question, suspecting that he might change his mind. However, Miller responded irritably that he did not want to continue. Then the director reminded him that he had been warned in advance about the director's difficult character and advised to control himself. But Miller countered that he had stated from the beginning that he did not want to participate in a romantic project. Exasperated, Patrick asked if now was really the time to be selective about his roles. He pointed out that being late was one thing, but swearing in front of the director and losing your temper was too much. He also noted the strange pride Miller showed towards Harvey. Then Miller, completely furious, cursed and dismissively rejected Harvey. He stated that the leading role would still remain his, and then left. Suddenly, one of the team members tried to stop him, reminding him that the leader was still talking. But Miller did not listen and left. After that, the unfortunate guy ran after him, saying that the general manager did not mean to offend him. Hunter then turned to the manager and asked if they were continuing to work on the project. He confirmed, explaining that Miller had been chosen to cover the losses from his previous failure, and that canceling the project was now impossible. Meanwhile, Harvey imagined his role, Chris. He was a student who had previously found it easy to get along with others, and was especially close friends with Lily. The thing is, their reunion didn't bring back the old feelings. However, she remained close as his only lover. They weren't the main couple in this drama, but they were an important emotional support in the story. This is exactly the arc of development that the director gave to Chris's character. Watching the actor's performance, he was pleased. The man was convinced that his intuition in choosing actors still worked flawlessly. After the scene, Harvey approached the director and asked permission to greet his boss. The director warmly agreed, calling Harvey a good guy. He modestly objected and headed towards the manager. Meanwhile, Patrick, still not hiding his irritation with Miller, heard Hunter's remark that he had become too self-confident. At that moment, Harvey approached them. He greeted the director and asked if he had come to check on the progress of filming. The group leader shared with a smile that he had heard a lot of positive feedback about Harvey. He even mentioned that Ms. Mira was upset that he didn't have any scenes with him, to which Harvey modestly noted that he wasn't doing anything special. Patrick then advised him not to worry about others and to continue working in the same spirit. Harvey assured him that he would do so. Before leaving, the manager reminded Harvey to keep up the good work and headed towards the director. After this, Hunter put his hand on Harvey's shoulder and praised him for how he was handling all the difficulties on his own. He admitted that thanks to Harvey, he himself had almost nothing to do on the set. Harvey just laughed in response, saying that it was too early for him to be greedy for roles. He still had a long way to go. Deep down, he knew that he was not without ambition. Beneath the polite mask of a newcomer, there was a strong thirst for recognition. He promised himself that within a year he would definitely rise to a new level, no matter what it took. Meanwhile, the atmosphere on the set was lively and joyful, and Harvey felt satisfied. Everything has been going smoothly since the visit of Patrick's manager. Even the one who had previously created tension had noticeably calmed down, perhaps under pressure from the production company and the CEO. Harvey's gaze moved to Juno, who was boredly eating popcorn. She complained that she had taken 2 buckets with her in vain. The spectacle she expected did not take place. At this point, the hero began to doubt that the girl was even on their side. Approaching Harvey, Hunter expressed hope that everything would end peacefully, adding that even Miller had begun to make an effort. He also stressed that the atmosphere on the set should always remain calm. However, Harvey thought to himself that this was just the beginning. Hunter agreed, saying that after the interview, scheduled for the afternoon, they would continue filming. He then walked away to answer the phone, and Harvey nodded in response. Observing Miller's behavior, Harvey noticed that he was really trying to contain his anger. It seemed that the leader's words had a beneficial effect on him, and while it wasn't an ideal solution, it was the best possible outcome at the moment. After this, Hunter ended his call. He informed Harvey that he would have to walk around the site a little more. Soon, an employee approached the actors and asked them to sign the posters. The actors were surprised by the number, but the girl explained that 50 viewers would be chosen to receive signed posters and booklets. The teaser attracted more attention than expected, leading to an extended press conference and more entertainment news appearances, and a busier schedule. Although everyone complained of being tired, Harvey felt differently. It was an exciting moment for him. His first poster, his first signature. He didn't feel tired, only joy. The director gave the order to complete the posters and booklets, and Harvey agreed. The director then ordered the cameras to be set up and reporters to be called in, checking to see if all the actors were there, and if Patrick had arrived. One of the team members confirmed that he had already arrived. After this, the director officially announced the start of the project's presentation. One of the reporters approached Harvey. The hero kindly asked him to ask his question. The reporter then expressed curiosity about rumors that the script had been significantly revised after his audition. Harvey politely responded that the director had indeed been kind to him, but that he believed the changes had been made to improve the overall structure of the story, and he also took the opportunity to thank the director and screenwriter. After the press conference, articles about the Train to Youth project began to appear on the internet in real time. The main trailer, which was supposed to focus on the main characters, showed Harvey's face unexpectedly often. As a result, the articles he was mentioned in began to gain much more attention than he expected, and Harvey felt genuine joy as he read them on his phone. Later, Ingrid approached him and suggested that they arrange a small meeting of the cast. Harvey asked if it would be just for the actors, or if the director would be joining too. Ingrid replied that the director couldn't come as he had a meeting with the writer about the script. Soon Hunter asked Harvey if he was heading home. Harvey responded by asking if he could join the cast party. Ingrid and Kendrick started begging Hunter to join because they really wanted to hang out with him. Hunter agreed, but reminded them to act responsibly. Then Harvey happily told the others about it. Ingrid, upon hearing the news, was noticeably delighted and perked up. She was glad that they would finally be able to drink themselves into oblivion. Harvey later arrived at the restaurant where he was asked at the door whose name the reservation was in. He replied that it was in the name of Ingrid. Then the girl at the reception told him where to go next. Then he joined his colleagues, who were already waiting for him. Ingrid asked if he had any trouble finding the place. Noting that the bar's facade looked unusual, Harvey replied that it wasn't hard to find, but at first he didn't think it was a bar. Then he asked if everyone was already here, because it seemed to him that the rest were missing. His question caused noticeable awkwardness among those present. Harvey smiled and apologized, suggesting that perhaps the tension was between him and Miller, adding that filming must have been awkward. But Ingrid assured him that misunderstandings were common in any group. She mentioned that their team also often has conflicts that are then resolved, and expressed hope that Harvey and Miller could come to a similar understanding. Harvey then explained that Miller had a difficult character. He can be capricious and needs special treatment to feel satisfied. He suggested that he had not expected to get the lead role and perhaps felt resentment because of that. However, Harvey noted that he did not want to speak ill of a person who was absent and apologized if he caused any discomfort. But Kendrick assured him that everything was fine, and Ingrid admitted that she didn't know about the situation and advised him not to worry too much. Harvey then took responsibility and promised that he would try to improve the relationship. Ingrid appreciated his mood and suggested that they order something. Penelope enthusiastically suggested sake, calling it the best choice. From that moment on, their party began. After a few drinks, Kendrick felt dizzy and wondered why he felt that way. Harvey supported him and advised him to drink in moderation, taking care of his condition. But Kendrick, already quite drunk, looked at Harvey with envy. He complained that he was the only one left who had not yet completed his military service. The thought was too much for him to bear, and he burst into tears. As Harvey watched, he noted to himself that many people don't realize how difficult it is to be a troubled soldier. However, now he saw his co-stars in this state, including a famous top model and a popular idol. Then he realized that they were all just ordinary young people who just wanted to find a common language. Harvey later asked Ingrid if her decision to pursue an acting career was at the suggestion of her agency. Ingrid explained that it was her own choice. She felt that her position in the group had become uncertain, and so she decided that she needed to try something new. Harvey came to the conclusion that perhaps this was the only way for her to survive in a difficult and cruel world, where everyone is fighting for a place in the sun. He did not consider himself entitled to condemn her. On the contrary, he felt sincere respect for her outstanding talent and hard work. Moreover, he understood the feelings that most likely pushed her to such decisions. After some time, he became interested in how Kendrick ended up in the world of acting. He said that the company, having assessed his appearance as too expressive to be allowed to go to waste, insisted that he try his hand at acting. He admitted with some self-irony that he had never been particularly gifted as an actor, and once heard from a director that the best option for him would be to simply stand still on the set. Upon hearing this, Harvey came to the conclusion that the director had probably done what he could. Soon, Kendrick expressed a desire for Harvey to teach him acting, which surprised him a lot. Harvey was puzzled by such a request, not understanding why the choice fell on him. Then Kendrick explained that the team considered him an unrivaled master of memorizing lines, a favorite of the director, who always copes with the role on the first take and never makes mistakes. He admitted to feeling a little envious and asked with genuine interest how Harvey managed to memorize entire scripts. However, Harvey tried to modestly downplay his abilities, clarifying that he did not quite understand what was being discussed. Kendrick then revealed that the crew had discussed the phenomenon and that he had once personally questioned Miss Juno, who reported that she had never seen Harvey rehearse or even read a script. After thinking about it, Kendrick admitted that it was indeed odd, since most actors, even after they've memorized their lines, usually still carry printouts with them. Penelope supported this observation, adding that she herself had never seen Harvey with a text in his hands. Then Ingrid expressed a suspicion that it all seemed a bit mysterious. If he doesn't read the text in the car, then when does he study it? Looking closely at Harvey, she guessed that he was probably hiding something. Harvey was genuinely baffled by these speculations. He said he couldn't figure out what exactly they suspected. Ingrid offered another explanation. She suggested that Harvey might have exceptional mental abilities. They allow him to remember the text literally after one reading. This version calmed him down a little. Penelope then laughed and suggested that Harvey was probably just practicing hard and diligently at home. But Ingrid added that, despite everything, she really believed that he was very smart. At this point, Kendrick, wanting to get to the bottom of things, suggested that Harvey could have been a graduate of Seoul National University, or even Harvard. In his opinion, Harvey was one of those rare geniuses that are born once in a generation. Ingrid noted with some irritation that she enjoyed the process of guessing and thinking, like in a detective story. But Harvey countered that talking about training bored him, and said that he was much happier when he was considered a genius who didn't even have to make an effort. Ingrid, not hiding her amusement, remarked with a playful intonation that she would try to pretend that she didn't notice anything. After that, all four raised their glasses, clinked them, and began to enjoy the evening. Penelope and Ingrid soon realized that they had overdone it with drinking. Harvey, watching their mood become increasingly light-hearted and warm, felt relieved that he had managed to change the subject so deftly. At the same time, he reminded himself that he should be much more careful in such conversations in the future. The next morning, already on the set, he looked around with interest and wondered out loud whether the atmosphere on other projects was always the same. Inwardly, he knew that they needed to finish filming at least up to the 4th episode before the first broadcast date. The director explained that a lot depends on the style of a particular director and the specifics of the project. Everyone has their own approach, and this is exactly how things are this time. Harvey noticed that Juno and Hunter looked tired. The thing is that they started working early in the morning. Hunter then explained that it was their responsibility to take care of the film crew. He added that they were lucky not to work on Miller's site, where the atmosphere was tense and nervous. He even warned Harvey not to find himself in a similar situation. And Harvey began to wonder if delays early in the project had forced the team to work in a rush. This, in turn, led to increased tension and complaints from actors and staff. The girls were already at the limit of their strength, especially after the party, and really wanted to go home. At this point, it was announced that they were moving on to filming the next scene. However, Harvey stood in the middle of the crowd and seemed not to know what to do. However, suddenly he heard someone calling his name. As it turned out, the director called Harvey to the next scene. Then he felt that this was his chance to prove himself. The hero mentally inspired himself, reminding himself that he was simply happy to be on the set and doing what he loved. Finally, December 8th arrived, Monday, the day of the first broadcast. The director gathered everyone in front of the screen and thanked them for their dedicated work. So he suggested that in honor of this, they relax a little with a glass of a delicious drink. Kendrick asked if that meant there would be no filming tomorrow. The director clarified that filming will continue, but after it you can rest as much as you like. He looked at Harvey and noticed that this was almost his debut, and his parents were probably proud. Harvey joked that most likely all his friends, and especially his mother, were already glued to their screens. Then Ingrid, overcome with excitement, asked everyone to pay attention. She said that the opening had already begun. All the guys noted that the opening was simply gorgeous, and the soundtrack perfectly suited the show. Then Hunter walked up to Harvey and called him a great actor. He congratulated him on his debut, and he thanked him. He added that the broadcast would begin immediately after the opening credits, and Hunter was just in time. Hunter chuckled and said he had a great sense of timing and suggested they start watching. He said it was their first viewing and asked everyone to pay attention. Everyone looked at the screen with excitement, and soon they saw Miller there, who told the girl that, in his opinion, their feelings were mutual. However, it turned out that all this was not so. Meanwhile, the director kept a close eye on the details of the film. One of the girls noticed that the actor had an unbuttoned cuff in one of the episodes and advised him to be more careful in the future. Ingrid took the remark seriously. Harvey, watching himself on screen, experienced a deep emotion. He felt that his acting and work were like an extension of himself. His breath, He couldn't afford to miss a single moment. At that moment, a heart-rending scene was taking place on the screen. After that, everyone was back to watching. Harvey was happy to note that he gets pleasure from more than just seeing himself on screen. He also liked how the series emphasized the actors' strengths and delicately sidestepped their weaknesses. The final montage clearly conveyed the main idea of the entire drama. One of the team members noted that the series has already made it onto the list of the most discussed topics. Harvey also looked at the trends and saw the audience's response. Then I thought that they really had a chance to take second place in the rankings. The next morning, Harvey woke up with a heavy head and dizziness. He immediately began to regret yesterday, remembering how he had succumbed to the general merriment and drunk too much. He chided himself for giving in to the pace set by the director, especially considering that both Juno and the group leader were participating in this marathon. Everything continued until the fifth toast, so now he is determined never to touch alcohol again. When he entered the room, he saw that both Patrick and Hunter were clearly suffering from the effects of the drinks they had consumed. However, they claimed that they got home safely. Then the hero looked around and realized that not a single person felt well. A few minutes later, Juno arrived. Harvey greeted her politely, and she answered and asked why he hadn't come inside yet. Then he agreed and headed into the room. Approaching Hunter, the girl jokingly asked if they had made a sixth toast without her. But Hunter, with a pale face and a suffering look, asked not to tease him and said that he felt sick. Watching Juno, Harvey felt more and more interest in her, which over time began to develop into sincere admiration. At this point, the group leader gathered all the team members and, without wasting time on introductions, immediately got to the heart of the matter. He reported that the ratings for the show Train to Youth this week were the lowest among the 3 leading channels. According to him, the Love Online project has become a leader, gaining 9.2%. This left Harvey slightly shocked. However, the director explained that such a result was to be expected, since the competing programs had already been on air for some time and had managed to build up an audience base. He expressed the opinion that the numbers could drop a bit next week and suggested focusing on the real contender, the drama Beautiful Love, which aired at the same time as their show. Harvey began thinking about the project, which attracted public attention even before its release, due to the fact that it starred A-lister Hannah in the lead role. However, despite the hype, Beautiful Love only had an 8.7% rating, which Harvey said was disappointing. However, he noticed a silver lining. If the team plays correctly and strategically, they will still have a chance to rise in the rankings. Patrick noted that although this was only the first broadcast, the feedback from viewers was generally positive, and he expressed hope that the project still has a chance to rehabilitate itself. However, Miller, judging by his tone, did not share the optimism. He grumbled that with a director like that, who acts chaotically from the very beginning, nothing good would come of it. The director tried to ease the tension by advising the team not to get hung up on the numbers, since it was the producer's job to worry about ratings, and their job was to focus exclusively on the acting. Then Miller, not hiding his irritation, turned around and declared that it was time to move on to filming. The manager commented on his departure, noting that tension was finally beginning to be felt in the team. Harvey, exhaling slightly, agreed with him. After this, the hero watched Miller leave. Turning to him, the director asked why he was still there if he had no filming today. At this, Harvey silently pointed to a stack of scripts lying nearby. The surprised executive looked in that direction, and Harvey confirmed that these were exactly the scripts he had been studying lately. Patrick admitted that he had never met anyone so passionate and persistent before. Then the hero said that he had already managed to finish reading the scripts that he had been given earlier. Even more surprised, the manager asked again if he had really read them all. Harvey confidently confirmed that this was indeed the case. But he added that none of the characters in those scripts really grabbed him. Patrick then began to doubt whether he had actually read them carefully, and Harvey noted internally that he had not only read them, but had practically memorized each one of them. The director drew his attention to a character named Paul, expressing the opinion that it was the perfect role for Harvey. However, Harvey admitted that this particular script seemed to him the weakest of the 3. He noted that, although the role was significant, the character himself looked pathetic. The genre was too narrowly specialized, and the ending was frankly unsuccessful. When the conversation turned to the remaining 2 scenarios, Harvey was unable to give a definitive answer. At this time, Hunter came up and said that the hero was very quick to criticize. Putting his hand on his shoulder, he advised him to continue to evaluate roles without becoming overly emotional. He mentioned that even Juno was impressed by this approach, adding with a slight smile that Harvey spoke like a real film critic. Patrick, in turn, advised Harvey to be especially selective, since his popularity was just beginning to grow. However, he decided that nothing could be done about it for now. Then he laid out several more books and scripts in front of him. He asked if he was really capable of handling all this. To this, Harvey replied with a slight grin that 10 minutes would be enough. The manager, still not believing it, asked again whether 10 minutes was really enough. Hunter, having started to read one of the scripts, noticed that it was clearly not an easy one. Then the hero, interested, asked what exactly he was reading. Hunter replied that it was Top Dog, a movie about boxers. Harvey noted that the project scored 91 points and overall looked intriguing, but the main character was described as being only 160 centimeters tall, which meant that the rest of the actors had to be at least 2 meters tall to create visual balance. Hunter then asked if any of the scripts had caught Harvey's attention, and he admitted that he was still undecided. His mind went back to a script called The Kid Who Cried Wolf, the only one left with a rating above 90, a trashy comedy about small-time street thugs. Harvey felt that a film like this didn't have much scope for potential, and he understood that quality was important, but even high ratings did not guarantee box office success. Considering that he was just beginning to gain recognition, he had to be especially careful. He dreamed of finding something more versatile, with little risk, but with a clearly defined role that could strengthen his reputation. At that moment, Hunter handed him another script, recommending that he pay attention to it. Harvey stared at the cover where the title was written, Fisherman, Lost in Thought. Soon the manager approached him, putting his hand on his shoulder. He reported that the director's debut film attracted 2.6 million viewers, and his next work surpassed the 10.5 million mark. The numbers spoke for themselves, and Patrick made it clear that Harvey should take this project seriously. He asked if he was ready to take on the job. Then Harvey began to think that a director who made a film that attracted 10 million viewers had incredible box office appeal. However, the script's low rating raised some doubts. Sensing his hesitation, the executive quickly reassured him, saying that there was no need to worry about getting the role. Their company had already worked with this production group, and at the very least, Harvey would be able to get an invitation to audition for a supporting role. Surprised by this turn of events, Harvey asked if it was really that hard for a newcomer to get a leading role. Patrick explained that the main character had already been approved. It was Charlie, a star since childhood with undeniable acting skills. Given his participation, the chances of a newcomer taking the top position were practically zero. Harvey agreed, acknowledging that recognition needed to be achieved first. He understood that, despite the artistic controversy of the project, the union of a famous director and a popular actor could not be underestimated. The manager added that if Harvey did decide to take the job, he would need to act quickly, as there was serious competition for the position. At that moment, Harvey thought about these words. If the goal was quick success, the choice in favor of Ryback seemed logical. However, inside he felt uneasy. It was at this point that Hunter asked if he was more drawn to another option, and Harvey admitted that of all the offers, the independent film was the one that appealed to him the most. Hunter then noted that if Safa was indeed making the indie film, it could be a great opportunity, especially if Harvey could land the lead role. Harvey clarified whether Safa was indeed a film academy, and Hunter confirmed this, adding that Safa operated on a completely different level than most independent productions. Even within the indie film space, Safa's involvement meant serious clout. The distributor was a major company, the curriculum was top-notch, and many famous directors were its alumni. Unsurprisingly, the competition was fierce. Now everything began to make sense to Harvey. This explained the high rating of the project. Although the upside potential was not clearly stated, Harvey realized that there was no point in hesitating any longer, so he turned to Patrick with a smile. The manager asked again whether he was choosing Ryback. Then the hero came closer to him. Harvey, with a wide smile and complete confidence, declared that he would take both projects. Later that evening, in the car, Juno commented that she was amazed at the force with which Harvey threw the script on the table. She teased him, saying that behind his innocent face there were quite ambitious intentions. Embarrassed by the latest teasing, Harvey gently asked Juno not to overdo it, and their driver Hunter just laughed. At that moment, Hunter received a call. As it turned out, the conversation was short. Immediately after it ended, he informed Harvey that representatives of the Fisherman Project had contacted him. Thanks to Patrick's efforts, Harvey received an invitation to audition. Intrigued, Harvey asked for more details, and Hunter explained that it was a closed casting, where all he was required to do was to perform freely in an improvised manner. Since the final casting had not yet been confirmed, a good performance could secure him a significant role. Juno remarked that she should read Ryback's script, and Harvey asked in surprise if she hadn't read it yet. To this she replied that she was waiting for confirmation of his participation, just as she was now. He reminded that he was still far from being approved, since he hadn't even auditioned. However, Juno said with confidence that he would still pass them. Parker also agreed with this statement. Juno was glad that everyone agreed with her opinion. Hearing such support, Harvey smiled, nodded in agreement, and admitted that now he simply had to live up to her expectations. After that, he approached Hunter with a question about the Shepherd project. He was interested in whether they gave any answer. Hunter said he sent his portfolio via email. Although there was no official response yet, the letter had already been opened, so a response was expected soon. Hearing this, Juno concluded that Harvey must really want the lead role. He admitted that it was obvious to the naked eye. Perhaps he was just expecting too much, since he only had one line in Train to the Youth behind him, and was essentially still a complete newbie. Even if it was a low-budget film, the leading role still didn't come easy. Looking out the window, he noticed snowflakes slowly starting to fall outside the glass. Hunter, wanting to encourage him, said that Harvey was still young and should not worry. He said that everything was going in the right direction for him, and that they were lucky. A rare occasion when they could take a break for Christmas. The snow was falling beautifully, and it was worth enjoying this moment while it was possible. After all, next year, most likely, there will be neither time nor energy left for such things. Harvey looked at the snow again and smiled slightly as he agreed. As they sat in the car, Hunter turned to Harvey and reminded him that it was Christmas. He asked if he had any plans now that filming was over, but Harvey admitted that he hadn't thought about it yet. Hunter then jokingly suggested that he might be planning to meet his secret lover discreetly, but the hero immediately denied it. Then the man laughed and asked if he was going to return to the company. After looking around, Harvey offered to give him a ride to Sadanga. Hunter then asked if he was talking about visiting his parents, and the hero confirmed this. Then Hunter suggested going to the mall. The hero was surprised and asked why this was necessary, to which Hunter reminded him that he should have already received payment for the first 2 episodes. And since he hadn't visited his parents for a long time, it would have been simply indecent to return empty-handed. Having agreed, Harvey decided to stop by the store. After shopping, he thought about how he had finally brought something to his parents. However, except for the day he was approved for the role, he always found excuses, citing work, and almost never visited his home. Even now, despite the gifts he had brought, he felt that he would most likely still be scolded. When he entered the house, he was greeted by his parents sitting together. The mother perked up when she saw her son. Then the woman, beaming with joy, called him a real celebrity. She showered him with compliments, asked if he was too busy and if filming was finally over. Then Harvey explained that he had some free time today and decided to visit them. After that, he handed them the gifts. However, the hero warned that he had guessed wrong about the size and had chosen something at random. His mother joked that at least he hadn't picked them up off the street, and his father asked if the items were too expensive. However, Harvey assured him that he had paid for everything from his fee, so there was nothing to worry about. After this, his parents began to try on the clothes and noted that the sizes fit them perfectly. Deep down, he admitted that he shouldn't have delayed this visit so much. Seeing the expression on his face, his mother asked him why he was looking at her like that. She told Harvey not to worry. The woman said he was just a son giving a gift to his parents. Harvey agreed and promised that next time he would give them something even better. After that, his mother invited him to sit down, reminding him that his drama was about to start airing, and suggested that they watch it together. When the reminder sounded, Harvey asked his father what was wrong. He explained that it was all his mother's doing. Regardless of the time she went out, be it morning or late at night, she always set an alarm clock. The thing is, she didn't want to miss a single episode. These words warmed Harvey's heart very much. The father added that he even had to persuade her not to hang a giant banner in support of the show. At that moment, Mom returned to the room and, catching what they were talking about, asked if they had discussed her while she was looking for the phone. But Harvey quickly changed the subject, handed her the phone and pointed to the screen. The drama was about to start. When the broadcast began, the mother, pointing to the screen, recognized the actress as Ingrid, noting that she made a pleasant impression and seemed well-mannered. She even joked that it would be nice to invite her over one day. But Harvey was surprised to ask why she brought up Ingrid. Then the mother remembered Penelope, asking if she was his girlfriend. But Harvey clarified that she was just his character's girlfriend. But the mother brushed it off, saying that it was almost the same thing, and added that he always pretends to be untouchable. She then turned her attention to Miller, saying his performance seemed unconvincing and asking if anything had happened on set. However, Harvey shook his head. But in his heart he was amazed at how accurately his mother noticed details. At that moment he noticed that an incoming call from Hunter appeared on his phone. Then the hero told his mother that he urgently needed to answer the call. However, he was surprised. There was no filming today. He was shocked when he read the message. It was a letter from director Pastuk from SAFA. He immediately called Hunter back to make sure the message was genuine. He confirmed that Director Parker had looked through Harvey's portfolio and then personally requested a one-on-one meeting. Hunter added that he showed genuine interest and advised him to give it his all in the coming year. Harvey thanked him from the bottom of his heart. Turning to his mother, he apologized for the interruption and said that nothing special had happened. She squeezed his hand with a warm smile and replied that she didn't know all the details, but she felt relieved. It seemed like everything was finally starting to get better. Harvey agreed, feeling that things were indeed slowly taking off. As CEO Patrick predicted, the ratings will completely turn around in the second half of 2024. Now they were officially on top. In the end, Larry won the award for Best Newcomer Actor. However, Harvey didn't pay much attention to this. The thing is, his drama had significantly higher ratings. While the hero was sitting in the car and thinking about this, his partner distracted him from his thoughts. Hunter noted that director Patrick had great charisma, and Harvey agreed that it was palpable. Hunter then added that the script displayed a striking intuitive insight and accurately exposed the vices of society. Reading the script, Harvey felt that it contained a cynical view of reality. It really did describe a hero who stood above all social norms. The underworld was depicted with incredible precision, as if it was written by a psychopath or a marginal. This scenario even had a special atmosphere. In some ways, she was reminiscent of Harvey Schopenhauer. Harvey later met with director Parker, who wrote the script. He greeted him with special warmth. After exchanging greetings, they sat down at the table to chat over food. The director expressed gratitude that an actor like Harvey showed interest in his project. He admitted that when he sent proposals to agencies, he did not even hope for the opportunity to work with an actor of such a level. Parker, with genuine delight in his voice, began to shower Harvey with praise. He stated that he is playing the lead role in one of the most popular, and talked about dramatic projects at the moment. The hero was shocked. He didn't expect that the director would like him so much. The man compared the very possibility of this meeting to catching a red sea bass. It was a rare, noble, graceful fish, with a special taste and symbolizing good luck that only the most persistent fishermen are awarded. He emphasized that there was something both beautiful and refined about Harvey's appearance and demeanor. Parker said that this was exactly the kind of actor he had been looking for all this time. It was in him that he saw that very inner charisma that was hidden behind the seemingly playful and frivolous mask. He saw charisma that could bring the screen to life and add real tension to scenes. And he said Harvey's distinctive looks, dramatic sense, and strong acting personality were all in keeping with the character audiences were about to get to know. Parker admitted with frank candor that he sincerely wanted to work with him. Harvey, without hiding his gratitude, thanked the director for the kind words and for the faith he had put in him. But Parker, making a serious expression on his face, immediately moved on to the practical side of the issue. He explained that although the project is conceived as a full-length film, its budget has already been approved. Unfortunately, he may not be able to match the level of pay that an actor of his caliber is accustomed to. However, Harvey, upon hearing this, only smiled and confidently replied that if he were interested solely in money, he would have moved to one of the major television networks a long time ago. He emphasized that it was not the amount in the contract that attracted him, but the vision of the future embedded in Parker's work, the energy with which she spoke about the film. This is what made him want to join the project. Then Parker decided to reveal the idea in full. He said that the film, called The Shepherd, has the potential to not only touch viewers, but also become a real breakthrough in the actors' careers. He noted that the film had already been scheduled for submission to both domestic and international festivals, and expressed firm confidence that it would certainly receive recognition and be crowned with prestigious awards. According to him, participation in this film could not harm Harvey's career in any way. On the contrary, it will open new horizons for him. Harvey, listening attentively, noted to himself that, against the backdrop of numerous directors for whom art had long since turned into a strategic game of manipulation and compromise, Parker stood out for his genuine sincerity. He already knew that he would take part in this project. The decision had matured within him even before they left the restaurant. He added jokingly that he should probably buy a suit since he had festival red carpets to walk. At this point, Parker blushed, not believing his ears. Then he began to quickly bow and thank the protagonist. Harvey noted that if anyone deserved gratitude, it was himself, and he felt fortunate to have been involved in such an exceptional project. He didn't throw words around. Shepard really did have that inner strength that's rarely seen in scripts. The character Hank was not just interesting, but truly alive, multi-layered, and deeply emotionally engaging. The message embedded in the story was powerful and pure, and Harvey couldn't help but admire what former SAFA students had accomplished. He wondered if Parker had other work. He answered honestly. He never studied directing professionally, but one work created as part of his portfolio for admission brought him several awards. Now, remembering that short film, he treated it with embarrassment, and even considered it a little pretentious. But at the same time, he admitted that it was precisely this film that awakened in him the desire to work harder and develop further. Harvey thought that the fact that a person with no professional training could create something worthy of recognition spoke of an innate talent that could not be acquired, only developed. He assured Parker that there was nothing to worry about. Even the script itself demonstrated his involvement and sincerity of intentions. He was looking forward to the start of filming and asked the director not to worry unnecessarily anymore. Parker, smiling sincerely, noted that it was Harvey who gave him the feeling of confidence that had been so lacking in recent weeks. To this, Harvey gently replied that it was because Parker was a good man. The director, slightly embarrassed by such a frank admission, was silent for a moment, and then raised another question. He wondered if Harvey could recommend any of his actor friends. Harvey raised his eyebrows slightly at the question, wondering if the casting hadn't been completed yet. Parker nodded and admitted with some trepidation that although he had already looked at quite a few actors, most of them stood out for their looks, whereas he needed an artist of a completely different type. He was looking for something rarer, an actor with an unconventional, almost eccentric approach, capable of organically embracing a wide variety of roles. Harvey, hearing this, thought for a moment. The next second he rose from his chair and with sudden determination said that perhaps he knew a man who could perfectly fit this description. He asked for some time to talk to him personally and make sure that it was possible. Parker, clearly inspired, immediately agreed, adding that if he really agreed, he would immediately make room for him. After this, the hero contacted his friend Lindsay. He immediately said that he would quit his job immediately for this role. A little later, when the conversation was over, Harvey returned to Hunter. He suggested that he not worry, and if it would make him feel better, wait outside with Juno for a bit. Juno, supporting the proposal, added that there would be nothing wrong with that. However, Harvey did not agree with this. After that, he resolutely moved forward. The hero insisted that they should go in together as a team. Soon they arrived at the restaurant to have lunch. Juno looked with delight at the table where dishes were already appearing, and her mood immediately improved. Hunter, unable to resist commenting, noted with a slight grin that if it weren't for Harvey, everything could have ended much worse. It was Harvey who was able to bring him out of his withdrawn state. Then an employee of the establishment named Lindsay approached them. He leaned over slightly and said with an apologetic smile that they were out of chicken wings. Harvey, noticing his tired appearance, advised him to just sit down and rest. However, Lindsay confidently replied that everything was fine and wished everyone a bon appetit, saying that lunch today was on him. He then turned to Harvey with friendly interest, asking if he had been too busy lately. And Harvey responded without hesitation that he had come simply because he had missed him. Lindsay grinned in surprise, noting that Harvey had not only come, but had also brought Hunter and even a stylist with him, to which Harvey retorted with slight offense that he was absolutely serious. Lindsay, with good-natured irony, called him a scoundrel for becoming famous and no longer visiting the store. Harvey, watching Lindsay, noted to himself that he still looked happy. However, behind this apparent simplicity, there was pain. It was difficult for him to persuade a man who seemed quite happy with his life to take up acting again. He remembered how in the past he hadn't even known how to approach Lindsay, and now a slight regret stirred in his soul. Then Lindsay admitted that the whole idea sounded tempting and really interesting. At that moment, the hero realized that he wanted to have a serious talk with him. He told his friend that only success and glory lay ahead of him. Lindsay then apologized and said he was just feeling a little nostalgic. Then Harvey decided it was time to reveal what had been on the tip of his tongue for a long time. He said he had been thinking about it for a long time, and had finally decided that Lindsay had no place in sales. Harvey believed that no one he knew had the same gift for acting transformation as he did, so he openly invited Lindsay to play with him. Harvey invited him to come back and act in the movie with him again. Later, when they were already sitting in the car, Harvey did not take his eyes off the script. He thought about how hard he had tried to convince Lindsay to join the project. As it turned out, their conversation was quite awkward. He understood that he had not received a direct refusal, but he had not received any consent either. However, despite his anxiety, he decided not to drive himself into fruitless guesswork, allowing himself to breathe a sigh of relief. At that moment, Hunter was talking to someone on the phone. Judging by his tone, the conversation was not going in a very positive direction. After this, Hunter said goodbye to his interlocutor with a dissatisfied face. When the conversation ended, Harvey asked if everything was okay. In response, the man said with displeasure that he was fed up with everything. Hunter frowned and said that Miller had ruined everything. They got out of the car and immediately felt the tension in the air. The atmosphere on the set was oppressive, with people's faces expressing anxiety and confusion. Harvey, watching all this, couldn't help but ask why the film crew was in such a state. An assistant director came up to them and apologized to Harvey for getting him into such a situation. Harvey, who remained completely calm, asked him not to lose his composure and hold on. Hunter, wanting to understand what was happening, clarified what had happened. The assistant director said that a serious conflict had occurred between the director and the actor in the morning. At some point, Miller began to complain again, and was then told that he should know that his dialogue had been changed, and no one understood why he was speaking from the old script. It was simply unacceptable, since he was the cause of so many bad takes. However, Miller denied that he was at fault. He said they should have given the actors at least a little time to learn the new script. So now everyone was at a loss and didn't know what to do. The man added that manager Miller is in a depressed state and is currently sitting in the car. Hunter noted that perhaps Miller shouldn't have been given so little time to prepare. He wasn't slow, especially when it came to memorizing lines. But this time the situation was difficult. Harvey was able to figure out what was going on. One scene was cut and 2 new lines were added in its place, which either simplified or, on the contrary, complicated the narrative. If Miller had asked for more time, that would have been understandable. A thought flashed through Harvey's mind as to why the director had made these changes in the first place. The assistant director, with a slightly tired voice, announced that the script had been revised and they were about to start filming. When Harvey asked how long the process would take, the assistant explained that it would take just over an hour. Harvey smiled to himself when he heard these words. He felt that the situation was becoming too protracted. After that, he decided that he needed to solve the problem with Miller. The assistant director went on to say that due to the inability to continue filming, Kendrick and the rest of the crew were stuck on set because the location rental time was strictly limited, and if they couldn't finish the work that day, the broadcast could be delayed until next week. Hunter couldn't hide his shock when he heard this. The assistant apologized for the situation, explaining that he tried to deal with the problem himself. However, Miller's manager did not answer calls and refused to make contact, despite numerous requests. The team tried their best to turn things around, but the struggle was exhausting for everyone, leaving them emotionally and physically drained. Harvey reflected in silence that such conflicts were far from uncommon in the filming world. He felt that these quarrels were a kind of message that seemed to send them far away. Moreover, it came not only from the director and the film crew, but also from those who were supposed to be on the same side with them. It came from their own company. Hunter, realizing the seriousness of the situation, said that he would go there himself to sort things out. He asked the assistant director to continue pre-production and Harvey to join him. Then the hero asked him to stop. He said they weren't obligated to do that. However, when he looked at the man's serious face, he froze in shock. Without turning to face him, Hunter asked Harvey to come with him. After some time, Miller arrived at the site in a car. One of the team members noted that it was time to move on and start working. Meanwhile, still immersed in the script, Miller sternly ordered him to remain silent. He said he wouldn't go anywhere until he learned all his lines. A member of the film crew, tired of the delays, reminded him that the director was very insistent. He reminded the actor of the strict rental limit for the site. Irritated, Miller responded sharply, ordering the team member to stop complaining and admonishing him. He said that if he was so smart, he could learn the script and act in his place. He accused all the workers of simply shifting the blame onto others and not taking any responsibility for those they should support. The actors. He said that if they don't want to be scolded by their superiors, then they need to do their jobs properly. At that moment, Hunter appeared on the scene. However, Miller did not notice him and continued shouting about how this guy only does what he blames others. At that moment, Hunter leaned towards the actor's window with a smile, attracting his attention. Then he asked what was going on here. Miller, pointing to his script with obvious irritation, spoke about the problems with the text, but Hunter said he quickly understood the nature of the conflict. He noted that everything had been going on for more than an hour. He wondered why such a big fuss was being made over 3 lines in the script. He suggested that the actor just get it over with and continue working. In response, Miller swore, and then Hunter, surprised by such categoricalness, asked him to repeat his words. Miller began to ask Hunter questions, clearly doubting his loyalty. He reminded Hunter that he was supposed to help him, not the director, that it was his job, and he was just bullying him. Harvey, watching this dramatic dialogue, was stunned by Miller's behavior. It seemed to him that leadership did not give the right to leave everything to the mercy of fate and forget about decency. From his point of view, Hunter simply came to help. However, with every word he spoke, Miller became increasingly distant from those who sincerely wanted to support him. An irritated Harvey suddenly grabbed Miller by the collar, demanding that he behave decently and respectfully to those around him. He asked whose manager Hunter was, Miller's or his. Miller, holding back his irritation, explained that he was still in the process of memorizing the text and asked not to rush him. He insisted on being released, expressing obvious dissatisfaction with the situation. At that moment, Harvey realized a truth he had previously been reluctant to acknowledge. On the eve of going on the court, he clearly saw that Miller had once seemed like the ideal leader to them. But in reality, he was just a bright but superficial newcomer, shiny on the outside but lacking that inner core. Harvey felt himself becoming ashamed of his previous admiration for the guy. After this, he turned to him again. Then Miller asked him with a haughty look what he wanted. Miller then said that any apologies now were pointless. However, the hero told him not to think that he could do anything. Moreover, they were not alone here. Miller, he said, was a proud man who had to be able to take criticism. Then he said that even if he filmed several takes, it would not change anything. Even if he had to repeat the same lines several times, he doubted it would change the quality of Miller's performance. Miller was shocked. He couldn't believe that they were telling him such a thing. Everyone turned to the side to find out what this conflict was about. Looking closer, the boys saw that Miller had grabbed Harvey by the collar and was trying to pull him towards himself. Harvey pretended to be an innocent lamb and asked his opponent why he behaved like that. Hunter approached Miller and asked him to calm down and let Harvey go. Miller ignored the request and simply told him not to interfere, wondering what he even knew about it. The director began to lose patience and loudly ordered his assistant to stop filming. The assistant asked him if he was sure of his decision, after which he stated that Miller did not want to act. He asked them which of them would be willing to answer if Miller hurt Harvey. Harvey meanwhile smiled wickedly, thinking that his plan had finally come to fruition. He knew he hadn't lifted a finger, but everything had gone like clockwork. From his point of view, even the director gave a very vivid speech, and it all looked like a perfectly executed script. One of the crew members approached Miller and put his hand on his shoulder to calm him down. He also said that they made a promise after the last time and had to keep it. Another man approached Miller and extended his hand, thanking him for his work. Miller turned around haughtily, thinking that this was some kind of secondary role. Turning abruptly and without shaking hands, he said that they all irritated him very much. This greatly angered his interlocutor, who realized that he was already tired of Miller's character. Coming closer to him, he turned him around and called him an arrogant idiot, after which he ordered him to listen carefully. He stated that after that incident they promised to complete the filming no matter what. The assistant director walked over to Miller and put his hand on his shoulder again to have a heart-to-heart talk. He asked him to be more prudent and think about the consequences of his decisions. Miller cursed and said that he really couldn't memorize lines that quickly. He also said that he couldn't stay here because all these people were tiring him out. Hunter took a few steps forward to attract the attention of the others. He reminded everyone that it was already lunchtime, and everyone happily agreed with him, saying that they were hungry. Hungry cast and crew members named Hunter the best person they've ever worked with. Hunter let out a tired sigh and said that if that was over, then they could finally have some food. Harvey was about to join his friend when he was suddenly stopped by the director himself. Harvey looked at him in surprise, not believing that such a high-ranking person had decided to address him personally. The director invited him to go to lunch with him, and then quickly closed the distance. As soon as they were in the dining room, the director offered to buy him a rather expensive portion of food, and thanked him for it. After a short pause, the director asked Harvey what he thought about the situation on the set that had just happened. Harvey quickly shut his mouth when the man asked him what he meant, after which the director apologized to him, saying that it was not a lunch topic. Harvey knew this was his chance, and said that no matter how chaotic the shoot was, he still saw it as an opportunity. The director asked what he meant, to which Harvey replied that until recently, he was afraid that he would never get the chance. The director was impressed by this pompous tirade and fell silent for a while, thinking hard about something. Harvey said with feigned bitterness in his voice that when he was an extra, he never heard anyone suggest that he go for a walk together. Immediately after this, he remembered the words of his friend, who said that for unknown extras, invitations were too important to refuse. From his point of view, even the offers to go on a shoot together meant a lot. He also added that even if they were just extras and didn't have any lines, the fact that they were invited back to film was a blessing. Harvey thought about these words for a long time, trying to understand how he managed to convey his feelings so accurately. The young man also added that famous actors were not aware of this, since they were always invited to film. After that he smiled and said that he had conveyed the main point quite clearly. Harvey then smiled and said that he agreed with these words and understood their meaning perfectly. Harvey reflected that he assumed he would never get another offer for a role because he was always turned down. However, everything changed when an incredible miracle happened to him that changed his life. Harvey was well aware that this miracle allowed him to enjoy what was no longer available to others. Watching the unknown actors thank the director for inviting them to the shoot, he realized that he felt an incredible responsibility. The actor noticed Harvey and greeted him, calling him Sunbae. Harvey reflected that because of this miracle that had happened to him, he had taken a place that could have been occupied by someone more capable than he. However, he was not going to give up this opportunity that was presented to him to the first comer. That is why he then decided to show the greatest respect to the man who was in the place where he himself had recently been. He took a few steps towards his interlocutor, which made him feel a little embarrassed and look at him in surprise. Harvey smiled at his co-star and said that they would see each other on the set, which was about to begin. The actor was surprised by this attitude from Harvey and froze, trying to overcome his shyness. Harvey smiled and noted that he probably detained him, praised him for his efforts, and then sent him on his way. The director, who was watching this, smiled and praised Harvey, which caused him a little surprise. The pleased director said that Harvey had just helped him make a very serious decision. After a while, Harvey's persona began to be discussed all over the news, and he wondered if this was the director's decision. Harvey noted that the director increasingly increased his share of the series' airtime. However, this had its consequences, as it meant that Miller's role was significantly curtailed. This gave rise to serious envy, and Miller began to look at him as a real wolf looks at its prey. Harvey was quite pensive about the fact that he was already used to this, and he felt more sorry for the director in this situation. After some time, he received a phone call and decided to find out who wanted to contact him. It turned out that the director was calling him, and Harvey quickly answered the call, asking him how he could help. The director was surprised that filming had not yet ended, and said that Harvey had already gone to a new casting, to which he replied that it was hard for him to sit around without work. The director thanked him for all the great scenes he had filmed and asked if he would be coming to the casting location soon. Harvey replied that he was almost there, and the director wished him a good casting. Harvey asked him if there was anything else he could do for him, and then said his name with a smile. After a short pause, the director said that he would be glad to see him on the set, after which Harvey, with a satisfied smile, noted that they would definitely see each other. After some time, the scene moved to one of the office buildings, where a casting of actors was taking place. Harvey felt a little uneasy as he walked into the room for the first time in a long time. The reason for this was that quite a lot of people came to the casting this time. Harvey mentally admitted to himself that he had hoped and thought that this casting would be private, when suddenly someone called out to him. Harvey turned his gaze towards the source of the sound and found the general manager, who asked him if filming was over already. Harvey smiled and said that filming had just finished, and Hunter added that the guy was very busy. Afterwards, they both praised Harvey, noting that he grew up to be a great actor who was not averse to hard work. Harvey asked them what was going on, and why there were so many people there, and wondered if it was a meeting and not a casting call. The general manager said that they wanted to confer before his casting and asked the actors to wait a little. They also added that the director was expected to arrive here soon, while mentioning that he was a representative of UK entertainment. Harvey was shocked to realize that it was one of the top variety agencies in Korea, where actors were trained by Caleb himself, who was considered the king of the industry. Harvey reflected that he had seen many of his students in major films. Harvey knew this was no joke agency, and now it felt like he was watching an MMA fight. The general manager said the director wanted to meet the actors in person before casting them because the actors needed to be seen in motion. He also advised him not to worry, and Harvey replied with a smile that there would be no problem with that. After a while, the door opened and the director entered, looking at everyone carefully. He apologized to them for keeping them waiting, adding that he didn't think so many actors would come today. After this, the director sat down in his seat and said that he was very glad to meet everyone present. After a short pause, he decided to introduce himself and said that his name was Howard. Howard expressed appreciation for the fact that so many people had shown interest in his project. He also said that he would have been happy to chat with each of them one-on-one, but since everyone was busy, it was necessary to move on to discussing the project. He said that the film was called The Fisherman, and in it, a prosecutor was pursuing an insurance fraudster nicknamed The Fisherman, and the genre of the film was action and comedy. Howard explained that the plot was meant to be fast-paced, with unexpected twists and turns, and to be an exciting and lighthearted film. Harvey reflected that the director of this film was an auteur with 10 million views, so there should have been a lot of attention on the project. Howard explained who was supposed to play the leads, and one of the actors realized that all that was left were supporting roles and extras. Howard said that was exactly what he wanted to report, and hoped that they would select people for the project today. He also added that many talented actors came today, so he was confident of success. Leaning against the table, Howard said that was the end of the briefing, adding that the casting would take place in the next room, and they would be called in one by one. Harvey smiled and thought that these conditions seemed absolutely amazing to him. Howard walked to the door and began to hear the actors whispering among themselves, doubting their abilities. He also said that the film's lead actor, Joe, had expressed a desire to watch the casting, so he would be there. The actors turned their surprised glances to him and could not believe what they had just heard. Howard smiled and wished everyone luck before disappearing out the door, leaving them in incredible shock. Harvey knew that the casting call was attended by some of the true legends of these films. Joe was a judge at this audition, which added incredible tension to it. The actors talked among themselves, realizing that the reaction of the leading actors meant even more than the reaction of the director. Harvey knew that Joe was well established in his career and had 17 years of experience as an actor, which would definitely make this project commercially successful. The actor's influence was the same as that of the director, and Harvey knew that he wanted to impress him in order to take control of the situation. Harvey knew that the leading actors would definitely make money at the box office, and he really wanted that. Harvey clenched his fist with some difficulty, trying to control his nervous tics. The head manager put his hand on his shoulder and asked why he was frozen in place. He smiled and said there was nothing to worry about because Joe was a good man. Harvey knew that the most important thing now was to show the director his color, which could attract him. The whole point was that for an actor, color was an indicator of identity. And in fact, it was this color that could hinder the actor's further advancement. Harvey reflected that even if he showcased his strengths, he still needed something to set him apart from others. Harvey scratched his chin and turned to his manager to pitch him an idea. He was interrupted by another actor who said that most people were preparing to play a gangster or a victim investigator, to which Harvey responded that this assumption was correct. Harvey knew it would be too formulaic, even though he had also prepared for the role. Our hero admitted to himself that he could not understand the feelings of the actors on stage. However, this never stopped him from putting himself in the viewer's shoes to understand how it should look. Harvey knew full well that interest in this would quickly fade, since all these actors would be the same. After thinking for a while, he came to the conclusion that in this atmosphere, he would be able to reveal his whole self and the color he had chosen. After a while, he came into the room and was asked if his only job was playing in the film Train to Youth. Harvey smiled calmly and said that this assumption was entirely correct. He was asked if his entire experience consisted of playing only one supporting role. Joe said it was time to stop the pointless interrogations that wouldn't give them anything new anyway. Looking at Harvey intently, he asked him to begin his introduction. Harvey smiled, realizing that he had the perfect ace up his sleeve that needed to be used right now. He reflected that he really wanted the expressions on the faces of these gloomy people to change, and that is why he chose a specific genre. To do this, he folded his hands in a prayerful gesture and began to pray to the Lord as if he were a monk. Joe smiled and realized that Harvey was trying to act out a scene from some comedy movie. Harvey turned to the teacher and said that he did not know how to get out of this situation and asked for advice. He added that he had prepared a funny story about the first love of a sinful monk who could not let go of his feelings. To do this, he tried to pretend that he was thinking intensely about some girl who had captured his heart a long time ago. Harvey sadly couldn't forget his first love from college, thus referring to the film The Nobility of the Drachma. This movie was not a hit and did not make money, but it was one of those cases where the script made everyone laugh until they cried. Harvey continued to portray a very sad monk, who rather comically cried about his girlfriend, with whom he had long since broken up. The acting was gaining momentum, and he was hitting the floor with his hands to add credibility. Harvey said that the girl occupied all his thoughts, so that even during his prayers he could not properly count them 108 times. Joe watched him closely as Harvey asked the higher powers to give him at least some kind of sign. Raising his face, he showed that tears were flowing from his eyes, and he said that for the sake of love, he was striving for enlightenment. This abrupt transition to emotional notes impressed the leading actor, who looked at him in surprise, as if he were the very teacher from whom they asked for advice. There was a few moments of awkward silence, and then everyone started giggling. Joe couldn't hold back at all and started laughing so loudly that it could be heard in the other room. Coming closer to it, he said it looked cool and asked what it was. Harvey stood up and thanked him for the compliment, whereupon Joe stated that the more he thought about it, the funnier it became. After this, Joe got up from the table and said that he was afraid he wouldn't be able to get that face out of his head when he was in the shower. Harvey realized that at first it was a rather peculiar compliment, but Joe decided to get down to business. Coming closer to him, he said that Harvey was really good and was able to demonstrate impressive acting. Joe asked our hero his name, and he introduced himself without any problem, so that he would be remembered properly. Joe put his arm around our hero and asked the director if he thought this man was right for the role of Maggie. The director looked at his script and tried to make an important decision. After some thought, he said that Harvey was the perfect height, but added regretfully that Maggie would have to wear a mask. After some time, he realized that there was a much more interesting option that could be offered to this man. Turning to his assistant, he asked him to call the actors who had passed for the role of the fisherman's gang. Joe said that these actors would be there pretty quickly, and then asked him if he had chosen comedies on purpose. Harvey smiled and explained that the supporting character was meant to steal the show from the lead character, so he decided comedy would be perfect for that. Joe looked at him with some respect, chuckled, and said he was impressed. Harvey looked at him calmly in order to withstand that gaze, and he did it very well. Joe smiled again and noted that Harvey's intuition was at an amazing level. After a while, The director looked at him in an impromptu shot and realized that he was too good for the role of Maggie. Harvey reflected that the script called for his character to have a fairly large supporting role, which could be described as that of a funny villain. The director continued his thoughts on this matter, and then asked what he thought about the role of Mango. Joe said it was a good idea, but noted that the character's portrayal would have seemed a bit immature. Coming even closer to him, he asked him to open his eyes wider and smile from ear to ear. Harvey complied and put on a rather frightening face before asking the engine if he had done it right. The director smiled and said that it would look great with the mask on, since Harvey was quite good at acting. After some thought, he said that it would be possible to give this man the role of Mango, and asked Joe if he would agree to this. Joe replied that he was completely satisfied with everything, and then extended his hand to Harvey. Looking him sincerely in the eyes, he asked if he agreed to work together. Harvey shook hands with his esteemed colleague, reflecting on how they chose actors as quickly as they chose food for lunch. Joe thanked him for the performance, noting that he was almost falling asleep from boredom, but thanks to Harvey, he was invigorated. Joe also said that he saw the drama that Harvey was in and asked him how old he was. When he learned that Harvey was 28 years old, he said he could address him more informally, adding that he could simply be called brother. Harvey was generally impressed by the sincerity, reflecting on his own concerns that Joe would be a top-notch actor and quite arrogant. He also noted that Joe radiated light even when he was just standing in the room, and it was these people who were called stars. Their pleasant conversation was interrupted by the general manager, who turned to Harvey. Harvey asked him what happened, and he gestured for him to come over for a moment. The director asked him if he knew what role Mango had, and Harvey said he was well acquainted with it. The thing was that Mango was the youngest member of Fisher's gang, and Harvey himself had once auditioned for the role. This character had several sides, as his innocent expression made people let down their guard around him. However, as soon as this character revealed his true face, he turned into a real monster. Harvey was thinking that there was a scene at the end where he and Fisher were running away and fighting, and he would have really liked to have played that. Meanwhile, the director tried to agree on organizational issues related to filming, and came to the conclusion that there would be no problems. After that, he smiled and said that he was very happy to hear such news. Looking at Harvey, he added again that he really liked his acting and image. The general manager said that Harvey became who he is only because of himself, and the director praised his efforts. After a short pause, he said that they were done for the day and promised to contact them later, specifying that they would soon set a date for the script reading. Harvey smiled and said he would be glad to see the director again, when suddenly he heard a familiar voice. He was surprised that Joe decided to address him by name right then and there in front of everyone. He looked at him with a rather sly squint and wondered if they would see each other on set. Harvey looked at him with admiration and said that they would definitely see each other, after which he called him brother, realizing that he simply had to brag and call him that. After a while, the scene moved to a ski resort where Harvey was having a fantastic time. Harvey knew he had made the right choice when he listened to Ingrid and agreed to go skiing. After a while, he heard a familiar voice asking if he was good at sports. Harvey turned around shyly and said it was nothing special, and he just enjoyed skating. However, after a while he heard loud laughter and realized that he was in trouble. Right next to him flew a huge crowd of his colleagues, who were happily skiing down. They flew by so quickly that Harvey didn't really have time to see the number of people who flew past him. However, after a while, he turned his head in their direction to find out if anyone had received any injuries. Kendrick jumped joyfully into the air, holding the sled in his hand, and quickly landed face down in the snow. He raised his face and began to laugh loudly, saying that it was really a lot of fun. Harvey looked at his friend in surprise when Penelope suddenly asked him if everything was okay with him. After some time, evening came, and the entire acting crowd gathered together to have a proper meal. Alcoholic drinks were also used to properly celebrate the joint meeting. Harvey only came out to the table and suddenly ran into the director with whom he had recently worked. Looking at his satisfied face, he realized that this man had most likely drunk quite a lot. The director said that his actors had a very difficult time then, but they held up well. He also added that he was even a little sorry that Miller didn't come here, since he was, after all, the main actor. Patrick said Miller was preparing for his next project, and asked him to convey his apologies for not being able to make it. One of the participants noted that he understood everything even before the project was released. The man also questioned whether Miller had thought carefully before saying that. He angrily remarked that the last team meeting was supposed to be fun, but he hadn't come because of his lack of manners. The director agreed and said that he had a hard time too, but his interlocutor suggested paying attention to Harvey. From his point of view, this man managed to act in as many as 2 projects, and that was great, and therefore there was no point in wasting time on all sorts of Millers. Patrick cleared his throat tensely, and said that he agreed with that opinion. The director reassured Patrick and said that everything was fine and that he held no grudges. He also grabbed Harvey's hand and asked if he was really going to be in the film, noting that it wasn't a good idea. As an argument, he said that a lot of time will pass before the premiere of the film. Harvey smiled and said that perhaps he was right, because there was some sense behind his judgments. He added that this is quite logical, because unlike a drama, the audience's reaction to a film can be checked immediately, and a film is like a hardcover novel. Harvey admitted that filming the movie was indeed not very easy, after which his comrades said it was time for a drink. The director decided to once again approach Harvey in order to make him an unbusinesslike offer. He said that instead of a movie, they could prepare for their next project together, but this time he would get the role of the main character. Ingrid immediately intervened in the conversation and said that she would be much better suited for the role of the main character. Kendrick also joined the conversation and said that he had an opening in his schedule, so he was ready to take on any project. Harvey felt a little tense and decided not to continue this dialogue and avoid it if possible. Meanwhile, a familiar face approached him and asked him what film he was going to star in. This person turned out to be Penelope, whose opinion he trusted completely because of her great experience. Harvey thought for a moment and said he would be starring in a film called Shepherd and Fisher. Penelope looked at him with undisguised surprise and asked if he really had starred in such a blockbuster. She said it was director Howard's next project, and the world-famous Joe was supposed to play the lead role. His comrades immediately said that he was incredible, and they couldn't believe that his next project would be with this director. A lot of people immediately approached him and said that they were kindly envious of how high he had managed to get. Some even speculated that the director wanted to take it for himself before its price skyrocketed. The director put his hand on the smart guy's shoulder and made him shut up right there. The actor laughed and said he was just joking, but the director ignored him. Coming closer to Harvey, he said that they simply had to film this project together. Sometime later, during a reading of the script for the film, Fisher and Hunter recommended that he go forward first. A little later, he was shown a bright orange debit card that must have had a lot of money on it. They told him that they wished to go forward with a light heart, but with a heavy hand. Harvey laughed and opened the doors to enter the hall where the main action was to take place. However, as soon as he opened the doors, it turned out that everything was not as simple as he thought. In front of him there was simply a huge crowd of people, through which it was quite difficult to squeeze through. Wriggling like a snake, he plaintively asked the others to make way for him. The actors looked at each other and realized that the actor from the drama Train to Youth was standing in front of them. After a while, he saw his colleague waving his hand to attract his attention. Harvey asked him if he had arrived yet, to which he replied that he had arrived there well in advance. Harvey noticed that there was a strange woman next to his colleague who introduced herself as a reporter covering their company. The girl handed him her business card and said that her name was Audrey, and she worked for Star magazine. Harvey said it was a pleasure to meet you, and then introduced himself by name. Audrey said she really enjoyed the Train to the Young and asked him if he was going to do any more films. She quickly added that now was not the best time for an interview, so she would like to talk to him a little later. Harvey said he would be happy to give her an interview at the appointed time, and she expressed the hope that he could find time for her. Immediately after that she said goodbye, leaving him alone with her colleague, and Harvey admitted that she was quite peculiar. Afterwards, he went into the room where the script reading was taking place, and discovered that there wasn't enough story for everyone. Harvey greeted him cautiously and said that he was an aspiring actor, after which he introduced himself by name. No one answered him, and he guessed that absolutely no one here knew him. He also realized that it would be very surprising if his role in the drama brought him such fame. One of his friends wondered who he was, while Harvey suddenly heard a very familiar voice. The familiar voice belonged to Hunter, who said that Harvey was a newcomer from L&K. He asked the other members of the jury with a happy expression to be understanding and take care of him. Harvey looked at what was happening with undisguised surprise, trying to understand how this was even possible. He couldn't believe that his comrade was here at such an important moment and vouched for him. The elderly man looked carefully at the script and slowly said Harvey's name. He also wondered who it was, looking around questioningly to find the person to whom that name belonged. Harvey realized he needed to be as assertive as possible and quickly stood up, saying how nice it was to meet him. He also apologized to his interlocutor, saying that he should have introduced himself earlier. Smiling, he again gave his first and last name, adding that he was an aspiring actor. The man looked at him incredibly attentively and a little intently. After looking at the script, he said it looked like Harvey would be playing the role of Mango. Harvey also recognized the actor standing in front of him, as it was Martin himself, who had about 30 years of experience behind him. The main character realized that among the other actors, there was no one who was more successful than him. Martin began to behave a little strangely, and he slightly confused his interlocutor with his facial expression. He suddenly smiled and said that Harvey was very suitable for the role, expressing confidence that he would cope with it perfectly. Harvey let out a tense breath, thinking that he was very grateful to his friend who helped him. Harvey was so excited that he didn't hear the footsteps of another man approaching him from behind. Joe startled him when he suddenly appeared right behind him and told him that everyone would be amazed by his incredible acting. Martin noted that if Joe was praising him, then he too was looking forward to seeing Harvey's acting. Howard said that this man had recently starred in a drama that just ended the other day. Harvey proudly said that he starred in the drama Train to Youth, and the other actors decided to give him a chance. He smiled and said that he would definitely try to show everyone his talent. Howard said it was time to read the script to prepare for it as best as possible. Harvey immediately set to work and prepared himself to give his full attention to his work. According to the scenario, ripples appeared on the Black Sea late in the evening, which brought on gloomy thoughts, and the image of a walking man was visible among the containers. The man would suddenly stop and say that it was time for his opponent to come out of the shadows. After this, the man said that he knew perfectly well that his teacher would be standing right there. Howard said it was going great and said there would be a camera turn, and Martin continued reading his lines. His colleague responded by saying that he had just arrived there and wondered how long they had been waiting for him. After this, there were several more dialogues between the actors, who carefully read their scripts. Harvey watched the events unfold and thought that everything was going as well as possible. He understood that no one was trying to stand out and grab extra space for themselves, and everyone was playing according to their roles. Rising to his feet, he realized that his moment had come to show his skills. Harvey felt an incredible sense of self-confidence, and a wicked grin appeared on his face as he got into character. He turned towards his supposed boss and asked if he had seen the time. Looking at them, he asked why they came there so late and surprised them with his intonation. Even one of the main antagonists of this film looked at him with some surprise. Harvey pretended he was a thug wielding a bat, and said he thought he was going to die of boredom there. Howard and the other actors looked at him with approval, realizing that they really had talent in front of them. The actor who played the main villain in this film smiled and realized that now was the time to begin the main action. Continuing his role, he said it was time to stop humming, and now it was time to get ready for work. He also said that their goal would be to select a team, a method of robbery and escape routes. Having finished his remark, he asked his interlocutor if he had anything to say on this matter. Harvey watched his acting and realized that this man was not called an acting genius for nothing. From his point of view, even the simple lines of all the other actors were top-notch. Meanwhile, it was time to act out the scene of interrogating the negligent criminal, and the protagonist further focused on Joe's actions. He understood perfectly well that Joe, by his participation alone, was pulling this project forward like an unstoppable locomotive. One of the thugs, according to the script, was supposed to lose patience, and his teeth would start grinding loudly. He grabbed his comrade and ordered him to shut up immediately before it was too late. Harvey began to feel a little uncomfortable because these actors were committing too much to their roles. Joe, however, felt incredibly comfortable and watched what was happening with interest. Howard waited a moment, then stopped reading the script, saying that he needed to take a break for now. Howard noted that they were getting too emotional and added that they needed to tone it down a bit. Addressing one of the actors, he said that the character's personality was not so sharp and he had to behave more restrained. Harvey watched closely as the director gave each of his subordinates comments. He also noted that it was a scene where they were stopped, but the attention was drawn to the actor, who was not prepared enough. One of these actors was a man who had a rather difficult fate. The man turned out to be an actor named Pagan, whose hands were shaking incredibly violently from excitement. Harvey recalled that there were rumors that after the actor turned 30, his acting got worse, but his attractive appearance did not change. Howard continued to give feedback to the other actors, saying that they shouldn't have cried so much. But he also said that the supporting character had to maintain his individuality. After a while, he suggested continuing, saying that they would start with the third scene. Harvey realized that this was his moment to shine, since his character had the role of an actor and a decoy, a task that deceived others. Harvey understood that his character could display different charms, but too much uniqueness could overwhelm the protagonist. After some thought, he realized how he could maximize the charm of his character. From his point of view, Mango's main feature should have been impudence and shamelessness, so he decided to focus on these qualities. His colleague continued reading the script and said that his character had lied last time when he claimed to work for a pharmaceutical company. Harvey responded with convincing stories, saying that life was changing, and it was impossible to cling to one person so easily. After a short pause, he pretended to be an innocent lamb and said that he was just a model student who came there to have fun. Suddenly he heard Joe say that apparently he was the same student who had been caught earlier. Joe added that it was this student he saw in the alley, which meant that he had lied about working for a pharmaceutical company. Harvey watched his colleagues acting closely and realized that this man was a real psycho. Immediately after this, he decided to show the true nature of his character and fell face down as if he was being detained. He clutched the script tightly and began to scream loudly, demonstrating his unquenchable fits of rage. He loudly called Joe's character a lying bastard who would definitely pay for what he did. Joe looked at him with a smile as Harvey continued to read his lines from the script with incredible dedication. Howard watched what was happening and began to laugh a little, thereby expressing his approval. After that, he turned the script over and said it was excellent, recommending that we move on to the next scene. People gradually came to the point of dispersing and said that everyone had tried very hard. Harvey reflected that his co-star's monologue was absolutely amazing, and he was very proud to be in the film. After reading the script, everyone split into 3 groups, the first of which discussed the script of this film, since the text turned out to be much more interesting than everyone expected. The second group was interested in readings by respected actors Joe and Martin. Finally, the third group was in full swing discussing Harvey, who was not at all at a loss, and remembered all his lines without the slightest hesitation. As it turns out, quite a few people were impressed with Harvey's performance as Mango. To the rest of us, he was an actor who interested Martin and Joe, but who remained a complete newcomer. In just a few minutes, his name became a hot topic of discussion, which couldn't help but please him. One of the actors approached Harvey and asked him where he learned to act so well. Harvey recognized the actor standing in front of him, realized that his name was Harry, and then replied that he had studied in Guyana. Harry smiled and said that in their world it was rare to see someone who studied there. After a short pause, he asked him if he wanted to go out for a smoke. Harvey agreed, and Harry told him that after his last job he wanted to change his image, but it didn't work out very well. He also admitted to his interlocutor that for a long time he remained unknown to anyone, and received the same roles with similar lines. But he also said that because new projects were constantly coming in, he could live with it and not need money. He also asked how Harvey was doing, and he told him that he had just recently finished working on a drama. Harry noted that the miniseries was quite difficult to endure, but Harvey stated that it was quite interesting. After a while, they bumped into the director, who asked them if they had also gone out to smoke. Harvey smiled and said that they were just about to head down to get back to their work. Suddenly, none other than Joe intervened in the conversation, asking Harvey to stay a little longer. He asked him why he left so quickly if he came for a smoke, to which Harvey replied that he had given up on that idea. Joe said he wanted to talk to him, and Howard praised him for doing a good job of playing such a difficult character as Mango. Harvey noted that he was not exactly upset, but he felt a little uncomfortable in this situation. Joe asked him about his schedule today, and Harvey quickly replied that he was free today. Joe grinned and said that the corporate dinner could have been held today. He added that they didn't have much to do anyway, so they could have a nice get-together and get to know each other. Harvey was very surprised by such interest on the part of Joe, and tried to find out why he was acting so strangely. After some time, a frightening thought came to his mind that the reason could be precisely in him. Sometime later, the actors gathered at a corporate dinner to celebrate this wonderful meeting. Most people offered each other snacks or a few drinks. Joe continued to show interest in Harvey, and told him that he should feel free to ask for more. Harvey couldn't get used to such attention to his person, realizing that this man had offered to organize a corporate dinner solely because of him. Howard said they were spoiling other people too much, and Joe said there was nothing wrong with that. Harry chuckled and noticed that, apparently, their youngest had attracted the attention of Joe himself. Harvey said that this statement was very far from the truth, but Harry said that Joe kept his eyes on him. Harry also revealed that Joe had obsessive-compulsive disorder, and Harvey asked him in surprise if that was the disorder that made people afraid of dirt and germs. Harry chuckled again and said that this statement was only partially true. Harry said that the man could be rude at times, but that was because he was constantly working and trying to keep the situation under control and lead others. Harry added that Joe valued other actors who were good at acting because, in his view, there was nothing more important than skill. Harvey wondered in his mind where this man got such confidence from, since he spoke to seniors and juniors as if they were conditional subordinates. Harry said that the man was still very nice, and that not only did he look cool, but he was also pleasant to talk to. Harry even said that this man could rightfully be considered an incredibly handsome man. After thinking for a moment, he asked Harvey if he knew anything about Joe's cast. Harvey replied that it was the first he had heard of it, to which Harry said that Joe had his own group of actors that he liked. Harry also said that the lineup of the group was very impressive as it was quite diverse. Immediately after this, he named a wide variety of actors, each of whom nevertheless was a real talent. Harvey listened to this information with undisguised surprise and said that it was truly amazing. Harry chuckled and remarked that it was a rather absurd combination, to which Harvey replied that it was rather surprising. He was well aware that every actor in this group was a star, renowned for his acting skills. All these stars may not have been as popular as Joe himself, but they were the backbone of the current film industry. After thinking for a while, he realized that the pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together. This dinner was only meant to discuss the upcoming filming schedule, but it still seemed mysterious to him. Harvey wondered if there was something else that had caused Joe to insist on being around for such an important event. After a while, he heard the familiar voice of Joe approaching him and asking him if he wanted to go somewhere together. Harvey looked at him with some surprise and a smile and asked where he wanted to go. Joe smiled and said that he would find out everything very soon. After a while, the scene moved to the set, where the director commanded the others to put the necessary props aside. Harvey looked at his schedule and realized he had never seen anything like it. He asked his manager why they were only filming 2 scenes today. The manager said that they couldn't shoot more than 2 scenes a day, because those were the rules, and that was the logic of the work process. Harvey thought for a moment and realized that he had now discovered the true essence of the difference between movies and TV series. In his view, if the series was like instant coffee, the film was like slowly brewed coffee in a bag, dripping down. Howard watched the filming process closely and said he was not satisfied with the result. His assistant turned to the rest of the crew and said that they were reshooting the scene. The operators reconfigured the cameras and said they understood the order perfectly. Other participants also turned to their equipment and other gadgets to prepare before filming. Harvey looked on with a smile and said that it actually took a whole day to film the 2 scenes. The thing was that, unlike TV series, where cameramen usually staged 80% of the scenes, in films every shot had to be visually impressive, and so each scene was shot several times. Harvey knew that this was far from all that could force the film crew to reshoot the scene. Joe took a few steps forward and said that they should try to reshoot that scene again. The problem was that if the actor was unhappy with a scene, everything had to be reshot again. The same result would occur if the director were suddenly dissatisfied with this scene, which meant that this cycle would repeat itself. The phrase that the scene needed to be reshot was already ringing in the heads of the entire film crew after just the first day. Harvey smiled and reflected that he found it incredible that no one on the crew had burned out yet. Howard said he was very pleased with the result, and the elated crew assumed that filming was finally over. Howard was quick to dash their hopes by informing them that they had a large group shoot that day, so they would have to work all night. Harvey looked at the script and started chuckling nervously, realizing that the man really wasn't joking. After some time, an assistant approached him and asked why he had come here so early. Harvey asked if there was a container scene planned for today, to which the assistant confirmed that his guess was correct. Hearing these words, Harvey turned his head tensely to understand where the filming would take place. Looking at the provided scene, he noted that the background looked strange, as he did not see any containers. In response, the assistant only smiled, burying himself deeper in his script. After a short pause, he reassured Harvey that there was no need to worry about it, as the containers would be installed soon. Harvey barely had time to come to his senses before a giant piece of metal rose up next to him. The assistant, who was watching this, asked him in surprise if he really thought so. Harvey looked around carefully, observing the dozens of containers of props that were on the set. He recalled the statement that a film is defined by its preparation and agreed wholeheartedly. Juno appeared behind him and said that they still needed to fix his hair, to which Harvey replied that he understood perfectly. He took a few steps towards her when he noticed that someone was closely watching him from the car. Harvey turned around, feeling someone's gaze, but no one was there. Juno noted that they didn't have much time to yawn. Harvey said he thought for a moment before rushing over to her to change. After some time, he appeared before the public in the stunning image of a young bandit. An impressed Juno noted that the suit suited him very well, and asked if he had thought about changing his profession. Harvey smiled and getting out of the car said she was exaggerating, after which he ran into Martin. Harvey noticed the seasoned actor and his expression immediately changed. He approached his elderly colleague and greeted him respectfully, noting that it must be cold here. Martin smiled and said that he couldn't just rest and sit around doing nothing. Harvey asked what he meant, to which Martin replied that the actors were part of the set too. Looking him in the eye, he explained that while all the staff were working hard, it would be strange if the most important part of the set, the actors, were resting. Harvey was struck by this profound metaphor and began to think that the actors were actually part of the set. He realized that this man was different from the rest because he was very cool, when suddenly Martin began to giggle. After a short pause, Martin admitted that he had come because he felt awkward relaxing alone, but Harvey thought he was being sincere. Harvey bowed slightly and said that he believed Martin's words to be the absolute truth. Martin looked at him with interest and asked how long he had wanted to become an actor. He advised Harvey to stay away from cars to make him last longer. Harvey mentally repeated the words he had heard, trying to understand where this would all lead. He also realized that if it weren't for the workers who toil in such harsh conditions, everything would be completely different. He even wondered whether actors would even exist in such a world. Harvey realized that the lesson his elderly colleague taught him would have a profound impact on him in the future. He also realized that the sound of containers being unloaded and the shouts of the production team sounded like a welcome to a new world of cinema. After a while, the crew began shouting at each other, announcing that it was time to start filming. One of the workers approached her senior manager and asked if he had a minute. Watching what was happening on stage, she asked if this was the last take, but the boss replied that no one knew about it. She wondered why no one knew this, since the director looked satisfied. The tense employee explained that they might think everything went well, but it didn't matter. He also noted that the actors' standards are too high, drawing attention to Joe. He smiled and said that they needed to try to film the scene again to get it perfect. Hearing his inspiring words, the film crew immediately perked up. Harvey also laughed at the sight of very tired staff members saying they hated the endless filming. Joe noticed him and asked why he was laughing. Harvey said that Joe was in a very good mood today, and that's why he thought it was funny. Joe responded with a genuine smile that filming is always fun. He looked around and asked where else in the world could it be as fun as here. After a short pause, he asked if Harvey agreed with his statement. Harvey looked at him with admiration and surprise, wondering why he now knew that this man would become an acting god. After thinking for a moment, he agreed with him, admitting that Joe was definitely right. Joe smiled and said that now they would keep up their fighting spirit and push forward. He then went on to say that these words meant that they would reshoot all night long until they got the right result. After these words, hardly any words could convey the amazing victorious mood that appeared in the film crew. Harvey also became incredibly positively energized, and wearily asked if he really wanted to work with them at night. The tired employees asked if they were really going to work another night. Harvey noted that the nickname God did not suit this man, and he should rather be called the Devil. After a while, the action changed to a combat school, where Harvey was taking hand-to-hand combat lessons. He was given advice on how to press the collar to his chest during a fall. The coach said he had extremely good reactions and did much better than expected. Harvey admitted that he had a weakness that his abilities could not compensate for, and noted that training was not over for the day. The coach smiled and said that he expected such an answer from him. Harvey wiped away the sweat and said that if his schedule allowed, he would like to extend the workout for another hour. Hunter welcomed the idea of extra classes, and Harvey said he was very interested. After some time, even the extra classes came to an end, and the heroes said goodbye to each other. Harvey asked why he was trying so hard, causing him to take a break to get a drink of water. His interlocutor explained that this was not a simple training session, but a tough course, despite the fact that he still had filming to do. Hunter said that many actors work hard, but most drop out once the press notices them. But Harvey was the only one who kept going. Harvey did not agree with his interlocutor's arguments, and decided to conduct another training session. He also noted that such words only made him feel worse, and the interlocutor asked if he was listening to him at all. Spitting on this pointless matter, the interlocutor said that Harvey could do whatever he wanted if he was not going to listen to him anyway. Harvey reflected that he understood perfectly well why Hunter was worried, but there was nothing he could do except try to get rid of another intrusive advisor. With these thoughts in mind, he decided to rehearse his next trick. He brought the appropriate props and properly positioned his body to land on the soft mattress. As he rose to his feet, he reflected that he had no choice but to make his way up and become a tiger. He asked Hunter if he could try again, to which Hunter rudely replied that this could no longer be allowed. Harvey said he was worried but needed another try, to which Harvey replied that it wasn't his condition that was the issue. After that, he showed him the phone and said that he was being called on an important matter, indicating that it was Joe calling. Harvey headed to the place where he had been invited, thinking that the only way to invite a wolf into a wolf's den was to offer prey. The guard approached the hero and asked if a place was reserved for him, to which he gave his name and room number. The guard said he understood everything and asked me to follow him. After some time, he approached the room and heard that there were several people inside. The guard advised me to relax and feel at home, and then opened the door. Harvey looked at the people in surprise, with Joe sitting at the head of them, smiling at him warmly. Joe then turned to his comrades and said that they should say hello to Harvey, as they had starred in the same film together. Joe also noted that the man had recently finished filming the movie Train to Youth. Smiling rather slyly, Joe said that the man was a very good actor, and that nothing more needed to be said. Harvey greeted everyone present respectfully, thinking about the many distrustful looks they were giving him. He literally read in them the question of who he was to be here. Suddenly, one of the actors said that these weren't actually food warehouses and asked why he was dressed like that. Joe turned to his friend Chester and said that he asked Harvey to come here right after the gym. But the girl noted that this did not change much. Harvey asked a girl named Alba why she was unhappy when he had already said everything was fine. Alba said she didn't say anything bad, and her friend echoed that Alba and Chester were right. She stated that if this man could not have manners, then she did not know what to do with him. She asked her comrades again how they could greet such a person. Harvey realized that this time the greeting was very cold and tried to come up with an excuse. He also wondered if they were always like this, and what was the reason for this attitude. One of the actors spoke rudely to him and said that the newcomer should be careful with the finger he points at him. Joe stopped his friend and asked what he was doing. The frightened actor tried to justify himself, but Joe interrupted him, saying that this had to stop. Turning his head to his female colleagues, he said that they too should behave decently. After that, a smile appeared on his face, and he said that otherwise Harvey would think that they were really being arrogant and would get scared. Within moments, the whole group started laughing, saying that Harvey was acting so natural that they couldn't stop. They also apologized to him for their behavior at the first meeting and explained that it was just a prank. Harvey hugged the man who had just been so demonstratively hostile to him and wondered what kind of company this was. A moment later, they apologized to him again, saying that they were very sorry about how things turned out. Harvey laughed and noted that there was nothing wrong with it. He just didn't expect that kind of reaction. A girl named Margarita said it was a mild prank because when she first arrived, Taylor and Chester were grabbing each other by the collar. Joe said it was best not to delve too deeply into discussing the past and suggested that everyone introduce themselves. Margarita decided to introduce herself first and expressed that she was very pleased to meet Harvey. She then pointed at Chester and called him by name, after which the young man noted that the reaction was simply incredible. At the end, she introduced another actor named Taylor, who also said he was very happy to meet Harvey. She also noticed a man named Kieran, who had not said a word the entire time and only nodded. Alba paused dramatically, then pointed to herself and stated her name, offering friendship. The rest of the actors gathered around Harvey and began asking where he came from. Harvey reflected that at first these people seemed to him to be some kind of local gang of actors, but it turned out that they were just a fun company. Being in their company, he realized that it was quite cozy here, and he could stay longer. He also realized that no one judges him by his education and experience, and no one limits him because of his appearance. He was surprised that the fact that Joe had brought him here was enough to make him accept him as one of his own. Joe said Harvey was the fresh-faced new guy who was gaining popularity. Harvey looked over at Joe, who said he was filming a soju commercial and was looking for an actor to play a supporting role. Harvey admitted that he would have loved to star in the commercial, but as a newcomer, he doubted that anyone would recommend him. Joe smiled and said he didn't expect that to be the only problem. Then he looked at Harvey with genuine interest and promised to recommend him personally. Harvey thought that power and influence were incredibly exciting, and said that in that case, he would be happy to take part in the advertisement. After a while, the action moved to the car, where Juno said that she wanted to confess something very important to him. Harvey asked her not to do it, but after a short pause, she said that, apparently, someone really liked him. She then made a dramatic face and admitted that she didn't expect to say that out loud, before showing the advert on her phone. Harvey complained that it had been a whole week since he had filmed the commercial and that he had been teased everywhere ever since. Juno said it was funny and rewatched the commercial. Harvey just nodded silently, then wondered how long Juno had been in the profession. Watching her acting skills, he honestly admitted to himself that he could learn a lot from her. For a moment, he thought back to the moment when he first arrived on the set of this commercial. Alba smiled and told him that he needed to be properly prepared, which surprised Harvey. Harvey asked what she meant, and she replied that he would understand once filming began. Harvey still didn't understand what exactly she wanted to say, when he suddenly heard the command to start filming the commercial. After some time, the take was finished, and the director noted that it was an excellent job. Harvey asked why they were doing so many takes for a 15-second spot, and knew exactly what Alba meant. Alba said that Harvey did very well, and asked if this was really his first audition for a commercial. Harvey admitted that he had screwed up 10 times already, to which Alba responded that 10 takes for a commercial is quite a few. Alba smiled and stated that she was actually a machine, and Harvey thanked her for the compliment. After that, she put on her hood and said that she couldn't afford to lose to a newbie. Harvey said he used to be very sad after his first unsuccessful shoot, but everything changed when he started working with Alba. In his opinion, she became his guiding star in this difficult world of acting. Alba continued to play the role and looked at him with almost sincerely loving eyes, saying that, apparently, she did not like him. Harvey came back to the present moment and realized that Alba was a top-notch professional. He realized that advertising was quite complex and confusing because, unlike cinema, where the director is clear, there were several parts and many versions. This fragmentation of the product presented a great challenge for the actors, but Alba handled every odd direction. Harvey recalled that they filmed one scene over 20 times, and she didn't even look tired. He realized that her words about being born to be an actress described her perfectly. Harvey thought that at one point he almost fell in love with her, but he decided to pull himself together and focus on the tasks at hand. Juno found a large amount of sponsored merchandise and decided to check it out. The driver said that soju had been sent here. adding that there were just as many bottles in the office. Juno was already reaching for the drinks, but she was stopped, told that it was prepared for a special occasion. Juno showed serious obedience, and Hunter told her that she should listen to him and put the drink back. Juno made a slight movement and opened the bottle, saying that he did it by accident. The next moment she uttered the signature line from the commercial in which Harvey starred, and almost drained the bottle in one gulp. After some time, the scene moved to a small village at dawn. Harvey slept peacefully while his companion tried to wake him up, using a rather quiet voice at first. However, after a while he loudly ordered him to wake up, and Harvey woke up. He heard an instruction to get out of the car, as his comrade would soon join him. But in the meantime, he should park the car. Harvey reflected on the fact that he had spent 2 days of continuous filming after an in-person and simple interview, then another 3 nights and 4 days of filming, after which he had also done some location filming. He also thought that he himself wanted to participate in this project, so he had to try his best, no matter what. At the filming location, he was already met by Lindsay, who greeted him, calling him by name. Harvey looked at him with some surprise, and asked if he had decided to come early. Lindsay said that such things are not in doubt, because he would never pass up such an opportunity. Harvey remembered the phrase carefully, realizing that his friend had once said something similar. He smiled and said that he was very glad to see Lindsay back in action after a long separation. After a while, he was asked if he had greeted the director, hinting that the director was behind him. Harvey turned around and immediately heard a question about how he must have had a hard journey. He smiled and said he couldn't wait to work with him. The director immediately closed the distance and asked the hero if he had eaten well. Harvey replied that he was not hungry, after which the director asked how well he slept. Harvey gave satisfactory answers to all the questions, after which the director asked how he liked the place. He smiled and said that the place was absolutely amazing and he really liked it. The director also mentioned that the script included the Hope Cafe, and asked if Harvey remembered it because he stated that it was a pretty effective scene. A few moments later, a young actor named Chappie approached them and respectfully greeted the director. The director introduced Chappie to Harvey, saying that they would be working together on this shoot. After that, he said that if they were registered, then they could finish their preparations and wished them good luck. Immediately after this, the director, whistling cheerfully, left to take his place. Chappie immediately turned to Harvey and asked why he was involved in independent projects. Harvey noted that the man was smiling, but the hint was taken almost immediately. He noted that he was clearly a difficult actor, and judging by his appearance, he was the main one in everything. Harvey also noticed warning glances directed at him, and heard indignant questions about why someone from his company was allowed in. Harvey said he is doing the project solely because he loves the job so much. He also stated that he really wanted to take part in this project, so he simply had to try his best. The director turned around and waved his hand, informing him that a rehearsal would soon be scheduled. Harvey turned to his colleague and said that the director was calling him, so he had to step away for a moment. He thought that it was not only because of the recognition of the director's superiority that he became the main one, and now he would prove it. The director waited for the right moment and gave the countdown to the start of the rehearsal. In this scene, Harvey played a third-rate gangster who couldn't do anything right, unlike his comrades who were recruited by the biggest local gang. However, his character was independent, and in the second part of the film he always went his own way, no matter what. In this episode, he was supposed to get hit hard in the face and fall on his back. Despite such serious injuries, his character still had to scream that it was him and no one else. The director happily announced that they would end it there and move on to the fight scene, praising his acting. Harvey smiled, then looked at Chappie, seeing his extremely sour expression. As he stood up, he reflected that if he was sure that someone couldn't play, and that person did an excellent job, he would be upset too. However, Harvey decided not to go into declarations, extended his hand to his colleague, and said that he was looking forward to the next scene. Chappie looked at him with genuine surprise, trying to understand why he was acting so polite. Some more time passed, and they moved on to filming the scene of the pursuit of the main character. Harvey ran forward, and at that moment he had a premonition of something bad. He had a premonition that everything was about to change now, because he was about to fight Chappie. Chappie prepared to engage his opponent and swung his leg. A few moments later, he quickly landed a punch right across Harvey's face. Harvey, in turn, did not give in for a second and continued to fight his opponent, hitting him with his head. Continuing to play out the roles according to the script, he looked closely at his opponent and smiled. He realized that this scene had become a turning point, and the initiative had now finally shifted to his side. After a while, they reviewed the material they had taken, while Harvey rubbed his head. After thinking for a moment, he said that the fight scene was rather pathetic. After some time, other actors asked him if he had really been unknown for such a long time. Harvey replied that it wasn't that long, and that aside from college and the army, he had been laying low for about 3 to 4 years. Lindsay said that the guy was a friend of his who they had gone through a period of obscurity with, and that the atmosphere was a bit awkward, so he didn't say anything. Lindsay also added that Harvey is definitely not the person he was thought to be due to a misunderstanding. Chappie offered a sincere apology, saying that he had underestimated Harvey and was biased against him based solely on his appearance. Other actors admitted that they were sorry they thought Harvey only got there because of his pretty face. Harvey watched in amazement as he was showered with compliments and apologies for being biased. He realized that he bore the obscurity and the difficulties that could not be understood, and therefore these people were not evil by nature. He poured a glass for the others, and at the same time thanked them for honestly confessing their feelings. Harvey said he still lacks quite a bit, however. Having clinked glasses with one of his new colleagues, he noted that he therefore counts on their support in the future. After a while, the filming ended and his colleagues said goodbye to him, wanting to get there safely. Harvey got into the car, and Lindsay said he wanted all film sets to be like this. Harvey was thinking about how there had been some kind of incidents happening at all the sites lately. He also said that the second director of the film, Ryback, recently called him, and said that today another actor would be playing the role of the stock exchange of the century as a special guest. He thought that reality was very similar to a computer game. Lindsay paused briefly, then said that Miller would be auditioning for the role. Miller greeted the director and said in an ingratiating voice that he was an aspiring actor. Juno attempted to film him, noting that seeing Prince Miller in the flesh was an almost endless honor. Harvey was surprised that this girl was so impressed with this man. He also recalled that this young man became famous immediately after his debut due to his refined appearance, reminiscent of a young aristocrat. This actor showed such an outstanding growth that it was even embarrassing to call him a newcomer, and everyone considered him the most anticipated actor of this year. However, the difference in experience and recognition between them was huge, and it is unlikely that such a super newcomer would have been allowed in without the head of the largest investment company with whom he came. Harvey reflected that it was no big deal for an investor to pitch an actor from his company to appear in a film he was backing. A conflict arose almost immediately between the director and Miller's agent, and despite the seriousness of the conflict, they decided not to make an issue out of it. Suddenly, the rich man said that he needed to give some lines to Mungo Miller so that he would lose everyone. Harvey watched the events closely and realized that the situation was starting to escalate. Howard said he would not tolerate abuse of power, after which the investor explained that the offer was based on Miller being a more recognizable actor. Meanwhile, Miller came closer to Harvey and said that he did not claim other people's lines, and this would not affect his role in any way. After that, he made a face and said that he hoped so. Harvey smiled and thought that if his opponent thought he would let his piece of bread be taken away from him, he was mistaken. Howard said that there was no way to negotiate with this investor. Harvey loudly approached the director with a proposal to shoot two versions, with him and with Miller, to decide which was better. The investor wondered what kind of nonsense this was, but Joe immediately supported the proposal. Joe said the most important thing here is not who delivers the lines, but how they are delivered. Joe noted with a serious look that the most important thing was to avoid delays in filming, because double filming was not worth the money. Finally, he added that if it doesn't disrupt the schedule in any way, he wouldn't mind checking something like that. Howard said he was willing to try to do double takes, considering Joe's opinion carried a lot of weight. After this, he abruptly cut off any attempts to dissuade him, saying that he makes the final decision and warned that no one should exceed their authority. The next moment, he turned to his team with instructions to adjust the cameras so that they would shoot not a wide shot, but a close-up. Harvey said that in that case, it was with Baby Miller that we needed to start. Miller stated that he is the senior person in this situation and will not tolerate such treatment. Harvey agreed to this arrangement, simultaneously making an obscene gesture while no one was looking. Moments later, the command was given to begin filming, and Miller began to play his character. Miller moved closer to his co-star and made disparaging remarks about him. The next moment, he kicked him in the face and said that he had violated his order. The investor was delighted and said that he always knew that this man would cope with the task. Harvey knew that there was really no arguing with this, because it was working really well. However, judging by Howard's emotions, simply playing well here was not enough, and this type of acting was not suited to him. While Miller has been with his investor lately, Harvey has been moving forward, that is, to play. Joe stood nearby Harvey and quietly wished him luck, saying that this scoundrel needed to be crushed. Harvey walked forward, thinking about what the teacher who had formulated the theory of acting and laid the foundations for the widely known technique called the method had said. According to this technique, without having internal experience, one cannot try to externally express something in which he did not even have an interest. Initially, it was necessary to start exclusively with oneself, and a game oriented towards others would inevitably be unnatural. Harvey prepared to play his part, realizing that every game began exclusively with him, and therefore he had to erase all idle thoughts that came into his head. He was preparing to show the role as it is and as it appeared on screen. As filming neared its start, Harvey was thinking about how he had to create a moment and turn the tide in the blink of an eye. The director gave the order to the actors to start working, and Harvey knew that he had to act right away. Without thinking twice, he delivered a quick blow straight to his colleague's head, making it look as naturalistic as possible. He immediately began to scold his colleague, saying that he was doing nonsense contrary to his orders. Sitting down next to him, he quickly began to insult him, saying that he was a real pig and that he should change his name. A colleague asked him how dare he talk like that to a person who is older than him. Harvey continued to play the role, acting cocky and ordering his elder to go fuck himself. A major investor who was trying to push Miller through was watching and knew it was an incredible level of acting. He had no choice but to watch this fraud in amazement. The investor reflected that he made this decision not because of Miller, who was a professional at romance, but because of his loss to a nameless newcomer. This man understood perfectly well that one should not pay attention to ambitious newcomers, but rather use their ambitions to one's advantage. However, what he saw now could not be described as anything other than a crushing defeat. From his point of view, he had just been made to understand that his opinion was of no interest to anyone here. The crew said they couldn't believe the line would be so powerful, and they didn't think a second one would be needed. Joe approached a surprised Miller and asked if he felt lousy after that. Miller asked what he meant, to which he replied that it must certainly feel unpleasant. Joe advised him not to pretend that he didn't understand anything, since it was clear to everyone that Harvey was a better player than he was. He also said that Miller is doing a good job, but there is no need to be jealous, because if you take everything for yourself, it will get boring very quickly. There will be no official articles about Miller, and he will start the next project as if nothing happened. The unpleasant truth was that this was the tragedy of the entertainment industry. Unfortunately or fortunately, society was only looking at the faces on the screen, which meant Miller could simply be laughed at. Those who lived by selling fantasies and the viewers who watched these fantasies were not really that different. Meanwhile, Juno was quickly typing something on her phone, saying that she didn't expect this from her idol. She wondered how one could be evil with such an angelic appearance, and continued typing something hastily. Juno also said that they weren't particularly noticeable, but she had been a fan of Miller for a long time. After that, she looked at them with a creepy look, and said that she would show them what a broken fan's heart was like. Her determination scared Harvey and Joe, after which they decided to never cross her path, so as not to leave a bad impression. After some time, the scene moved to an international airport, where the heroes were already preparing for a flight to another country. Hunter said they were now set to film in China immediately after the cowboy. Harvey said his friend had been through a lot and took the luggage to carry it himself. Harvey sympathized with his friend who was trying to juggle two schedules and running back and forth. Hunter asked Juno, noting that those who take care of everything probably get even more tired. Harvey looked at them carefully, adjusting his amazing cap and thinking hard. Hunter said that it is not worth being distracted by others, but rather thinking about filming, because it will be difficult to film in China. He also said that he will find out everything once he has filmed, and he might even be invited to the Busan International Film Festival. Harvey said he loved being abroad, even though it was sometimes quite difficult. In fact, our hero felt very tired and incredibly heavy. After a few days, he felt like a real squeezed lemon that was about to die. He realized that what was happening was reminiscent of the TV series Live, where over the course of a few days, a person changes beyond recognition. However, the experience was very positive as the Dream City was a luxury resort. The local population was very friendly when they saw how naturally he delivered lines they had never seen before. All this happened despite the fact that Harvey knew almost no Chinese, but acted as if he was obsessed with work. Harvey wondered if it was normal to be obsessed with a movie script. He suggested that learning a script in a foreign language might even help improve foreign language skills. In his opinion, scripts for famous American and British TV series can be found quite easily, which means that working abroad is not such an impossible dream. He thought to himself that the road to that career was still a long way off. The director was wondering whether to start filming when he was suddenly interrupted by the main investor. Harvey watched the proceedings and said that everyone was trying incredibly hard. Joe looked at the investor and asked what he was doing here at this time of day. The investor showed bags of food, saying that everyone must be very tired. Immediately after this, he began to rush from person to person, offering to take a small treat. The investor, who had recently tried to push Miller into filming, suddenly changed beyond recognition, as if he was facing imminent death. Harvey watched him closely, trying to understand the reason for such a sudden change. After a few moments, the man turned towards Harvey. He came closer and asked if he should touch up his makeup, saying that he looked very handsome. Right after that, he took him by the hand and said that after filming he should return to Korea. and recommended that he continue to try. He also said that he would like to have a cup of coffee with him after filming alone.